Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto uses his forbidden jutsu to make Rias love part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A soft sigh was heard within a building separate from a larger one that was surrounded by young men and women in uniforms. The one who sighed was seated behind a desk, their head in their hands in a manner of despair. The hand slid down, slightly dragging the skin of their face before the identity was revealed. Blue-green eyes looked around the room before a stray lock of stunning crimson hair fell in front of them. Frowning, the young woman blew upward and sent the lock away from her view before she stood up from her desk. She moved away from the main room and went down the hall, stopping at the second door on the right and pulling out a simple grey key. Unlocking the door, she opened it and stepped inside of a room that gave her a simultaneous feeling of pride and embarrassment. Shelves filled every wall, and the shelves themselves were filled with various Japanese manga and anime series, not one of them incomplete or not up to date. It was in this room that Rias Gremory, the devil heiress of the Gremory household, escaped from the reality that held all her problems. Here, she escaped into the fantasy that were her collections. She made her way to the shelf that held the H section and pulled out a book near the end. Inspecting the cover, she smiled at the sight of the main protagonist and the title behind them, The Hurricane Chronicles. The protagonist was in a destroyed orange and black jumpsuit, his face set in fierce determination that burned in those beautiful blue eyes that she could get lost in. His hair was like a sun, bright gold with spikes that shot in every direction like the solar rays. Behind him were the images of a ravenet man with strange eyes, a pinkette woman with a purple diamond mark on her forehead, a silver-haired man with a face mask, and finally a regal woman with 3 eyes and pure white hair. This was the final book of the series, and she was on the last chapters. The main character, Menma Uzumaki, had just clashed for the final time with his estranged friend and rival, Sasuke. The clash had cost the two their dominant arms, but they had been able to get replacements for them thanks to the cells of their village's first leader. While Menma had immediately taken the replacement, Sasuke refused and chose to travel the world. Before he left, Rias saw that he ran into Menma one last time and finally accepted the scratched headband from 3 years past. With the promise to see each other again, they went their separate ways. Rias kept reading and the story ended with Menma having married Hinata Hyuga and having 2 children. The final scene showed him having finally achieved his dream as Hokage and showed the Hidden Leaf Village and Kurama, the 9-tailed fox that had been with Menma since the start. She closed the book and leaned her head back against the shelf she chose to sit in front of. Out of all of the books and anime in her collection, the story of Menma was her favorite. To her, Menma was a hero who fought against his fate and saved his world. She wished she could do the same and escape the marriage she was fated to be in with Rias Phoenix, a pompous devil who saw her as nothing more than a trophy. Sighing, she knew that Menma was just a fantasy and despondently put the book back, returning to the reality that she despised. Steeling herself, she headed back to the main room to await the arrival of her peerage and her betrothed. All the while, she was desperately wishing for someone, anyone, to save her. NNGH, groaned a blonde young man as he felt his damaged nerves connecting with foreign ones. That wasn't fun. Oh, don't be such a baby, playfully admonished the woman overseeing his operation. She had bright pink hair, green eyes, and a purple diamond mark on her forehead. You faced down Madara, Kaguya, and Sasuke and took more than this. Not the point, grumbled the blonde as he flexed the pale fingers of his new arm. From the elbow down, his tan complexion turned an immediate white and the only thing separating the 2 skin tones was a dark scar. Speaking of, where is Sasuke anyway, Sakura-chan? She sighed with a downcast look at the question. He wanted his own room and requested not to see anyone after I attached his replacement arm. I don't know what's wrong with him, but he's so different from how he used to be. We all are, the blonde commented in hopes of cheering her up. 3 years changes people. I'm sure he'll come around. She nodded, though it was hesitant. I hope so. Anyway, just take it easy for a while, Naruto. The arm needs some time to get better synchronized with your nerves. When she saw him nod, she smiled and hugged him gently. I'm glad you're all right, Barker. You're my best friend. Naruto Uzumaki smiled and hugged her back. While before he would have wanted to be more than friends, he had taken plenty of time to sort out his feelings. While he still loved Sakura, it was more along the lines of loving a sister, one that he never had before. As for Hinata, while he appreciated all that she had done and how she felt, he couldn't feel the same for her. She was a friend, and she had been one for way too long. He couldn't see her as anything more. He sighed boredly and laid back on his bed, raising his new right arm and constantly flexing the fingers to get a better feel for it. He smiled at the generosity of the first Hokage, Hashirama. It would have been very difficult to get used to having only one arm, but now he just had to get used to a replaced arm. After the first had made 2 arms for both him and Sasuke, the full late Hokage returned back to their rest. Before he left though, Minato Namikaze had wished his son, Naruto, nothing but the best. Not only that, but the 4 of them had all said that Naruto was already a Hokage in spirit and that he carried the will of fire in him. Hearing that from his heroes made Naruto grin and promise to keep the will of fire strong. The Uzumaki sighed again as he stood up from his bed and grabbed the clothes that Sakura had left for him. When he was finished, he stood in a pair of orange cargo pants with an ash-grey belt, a black shirt that had buttons on the sleeves and orange where the zipper was, a mesh undershirt, and his hidden leaf headband sewed on the left shoulder of his black shirt. He slipped on his black sandals and the broken necklace that Tsunade gave him years ago, unbuttoned the right sleeve so his wrapped right arm had more freedom, and smiled before he left his room and made his way to the front desk to check out. His blue eyes blinked when he caught sight of Sasuke already at the desk. He was dressed in a black shirt with a high collar, dark purple pants with his sword strapped behind him, black sandals, and a grey traveling cloak. He turned just in time to see Naruto, and the blonde saw that Sasuke's left eye was still active. It was a red eye with rings and 3 Tomo markings on each ring, the Rinnegan provided to him by Hagoromo Tsutsuki when he unlocked the Uchiha's link to Indra. Naruto gave the Ravenet a warm grin and waved with his new right arm. "Yo, Sasuke!" he greeted as he approached. "Glad to see you're all right. We really let each other have it, huh?" The blonde chucked good-naturedly like he was reliving a fond memory while the Uchiha flexed his new arm unseen. Truth be told, the Uchiha was still very sore about how even he and the blonde fool in front of him were, even after all the power he had at his disposal. It infuriated him beyond measure. Blame his pride or his superiority complex, but Sasuke Uchiha was bitter about the fight. But he didn't let his emotion show as he replied, "Yeah. I suppose we did." His bitterness slowly began to influence his thoughts, making him form a plan in his mind. "Do you mind if we talk privately for a moment, Naruto?" The blonde tilted his head in wonder at what Sasuke wanted to talk about, but he then shrugged and smiled. "Sure thing. Just let me check out real quick." Without waiting for the Uchiha to acknowledge the request, he filled out the needed forms and then followed Sasuke to the training field that had belonged to Team 7 so long ago. Naruto smiled fondly at the area and murmured, "Definitely takes you back, doesn't it, Sasuke?" The Uchiha couldn't help but agree as he regarded the 3 training posts. An image of Team 7 as fresh genin appeared for a brief moment before vanishing. "It does. So, what did you want to talk about, Sasuke? I want to know why you tried so hard to stop me. Why were you so against my revolution when it was meant to prevent others from living the hell we endured?" The Uzumaki blinked in surprise at the question. "You're asking me that? Come on, Sasuke. You should know the answer to that." Sasuke frowned at that, showing Naruto that he did not. Sighing, Naruto elaborated, "Look, you're my friend Sasuke. If you went through with your revolution, you would have made yourself the enemy of the world, no better than Madara. I couldn't let you do that when I could help you. You've lived by hatred for so long, and it hurts to see how much it's changed you. You can't do everything on your own, you know." Mismatching eyes turned away from concerned blue ones, unable to look at them. "I never asked for you to help me. I don't need your help, and I never did." "That's just your anger talking," countered Naruto. "Let me in, Sasuke. I'm your friend." "Yeah," acknowledged Sasuke. "You are my friend, but you're also the biggest obstacle in my life." The blonde frowned at the Uchiha's words while, within Naruto's seal, rabbit-like ears perked up and a blood-red eye shot open. Following that was a deep voice yelling out, "Naruto, watch out!" "But not anymore," finished Sasuke as he turned back to Naruto, his Rinnegan eye spinning its Tomo rapidly and displacing the air around them. "Kamu!" he cried, and Naruto was unable to react fast enough to avoid it. He tried to brace himself with his chakra, and even called on his 6 paths chakra to try and hold him in place. However, the chakra appeared too late and Naruto was sucked away into the vortex while Sasuke fell to a knee from the chakra drain. His chakra hadn't recovered enough for him to do that without any drawbacks, but he had always been an impatient man. The next thing he knew though was being surrounded by hidden leaf ANBU before feeling something strike the back of his head. Then, he only knew darkness. "To answer your question, Hyudu-san," began a silver-haired woman in a maid's uniform, the man standing before you is Rias Phoenix-sama, and he is the husband-to-be for Rias-sama." "Say what?" cried the brunette teen in anger. The smug look on the blonde's face really set him off. "I'll say this once more," Rias started, glaring at the Phoenix. "I refuse to marry you, Riza." The blonde man merely laughed at her declaration. "You and I both know that there's no way this marriage will be denied, my dear Rias. After all, our family lines are growing thin, and a merging of the houses will be a great turning point for the future of us devils." "I still refuse. I'll beat you in a rating game and free myself from this pact between our houses." "And how do you plan to do that with so few pieces? Do you think a solution will appear out of thin air?" He laughed again, and Rias was about to retort before she and everyone else, save for Issei and Aisha, tensed. A sudden feeling of immense energy output was felt, and the space around the center of the room began to twist and swirl. From the distortion, the devils all took hold of the sight of a blonde man stumbling out and falling to his knees. Rias blinked at the sight, and Grafia narrowed her eyes in case he was a threat. However, when the man coughed up blood and held his stomach with a wrapped arm, Aisha was the first to act. She rushed to his side and summoned forth her twilight healing, covering the man in a bright glow. "Ugh," he groaned as the pain slowly receded. When it was gone completely, he took in a deep breath of air before smiling at the nun-turned devil. "Thanks for that, Nei-chan," he said, making Aisha blush in embarrassment at the title. "No. It was no problem at all, really," she replied, waving her hands frantically. He chuckled at her flustered face, being reminded of Hinata and how she acted before. Standing up, he regarded everyone in the room with a critical eye, impressing Grafia at how he was ready to act in a moment's notice. "Can someone tell me where I am, please?" he asked politely. "Some bastard sent me here with that damn eye of his, and I'd like to see if I can get back home." "I believe it would be more prudent to know who you are first," suggested the maid as she stepped forward and stood between the man and Rias. "Me? Oh, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, from the Hidden Leaf Village." Rias's eyes widened in shock at his answer before she moved out from behind Grafia, much to her protest. "Did this man use a red rippled eye that had Tomo around the rings?" "Yeah," answered Naruto with a grin while the others looked lost. "So, do you know how I can get home, Red-chan?" She was silent in shock, not hearing his question while her mind ran at full speed. It shouldn't be possible. He was just a character, and his name was Menma. This guy can't be him, can he? Red-chan?" asked the Uzumaki. "Are you okay?" "Hey!" interrupted Riza before Rias could answer, making Naruto turn to him. "No one knows where your pathetic village is." Only Rias and Grafia saw Naruto's fingers twitch. "Now why don't you just leave, trash? This meeting doesn't concern you." "Now, that's just rude," commented Naruto with a pout, fingers twitching again. "I never did anything to you and you're already mad at me." "Geez? You interrupted this meeting and you're speaking to my fiancé so freely," argued Riza. "Your fiancé? You mean Red-chan?" He mentally noted how the beautiful black-haired woman in Rias's group giggled behind her sleeve. "Yes. Now stop calling her that." He hummed out loud thoughtfully before turning back to Rias. "You don't mind me calling you that, do I?" Rias turned to Riza, seeing how he was fuming before a smirk came to her face. "Not at all, Naruto-kun," she answered, relishing in Riza's growing anger. "But you should know that he's not my fiancé. He's actually a pompous fool who I'm in an arranged marriage with." "Ouch," commented the Uzumaki with a chuckle. "Definitely could do better than him. I mean, with that overgrown stick so far up his ass, I wouldn't be surprised if he played for the same team." Rias's peerage, save for the ever-stoic Koneko and the innocent Aisha, snickered at his comment while Riza was so angry that his demonic power was leaking out and heating up the room. Grafia stopped him though with a sharp look before she cleared her throat, catching Naruto's attention. "Uzumaki-san, unfortunately I have never heard of a Hidden Leaf Village before. However, I believe that my king should be able to help you. If you would come with me after this meeting, I'll take you to see him." The whiskered blonde grinned, making a few of Riza's peerage blush. "Thanks a bunch, Nei-sama. My name is Grafia Lucifuge, Uzumaki-san." "Right, Grafia-ne," he answered back, never losing his grin. The woman merely rolled her eyes, but said nothing. The young man before her acted too much like her husband, but it was a nice change of pace at the same time. please wait outside for a moment, Uzumaki-san. This meeting is almost finished. Sure thing. He then turned to Rias and gave her a two-fingered salute. Well, I'll see you around, Red-chan. Good luck with the lonely nights. All that guy needs is his anal stick. He then made his way outside of the clubroom and ignored the look of pure hatred Rias was sending his way. Leaning against the wall outside, he took note of a few people walking around in matching clothes. He deduced that they were in uniforms of some kind and that Red-chan and her group were stationed here. After some time, Grieving stepped out and turned to him. The meeting is over now, Uzumaki-san. I will be taking you to my king now. So, what exactly are you all? Asked the blonde. I mean, you're not human, are you? You're correct. However, I believe my king would be able to explain things better than I. He'll tell you all about it while you two talk. Right, nodded Naruto. I'll just ask him then. Also, added the woman, you must understand that it isn't normal for humans to be brought to our world unless we're making them one of our kind. However, your unique energy will make this an exception. But if you try anything, hey, believe me, interrupted Naruto as he raised his hands in a placating manner. I won't try anything, promise. You guys can help me try to get back home, right? She nodded in response. Then I won't do anything that could ruin my chances. Good. Now, please stand next to me. Once he did, she opened up the portal, hiding their presence from the students around the school, and transported the two of them to the underworld. Before they fully disappeared, Naruto turned to the window of the clubroom and caught sight of Rias and her peerage one last time. He grinned at them just as he vanished, missing Rias' smile at him. "Ara, Bucho," giggled Akeno, her queen. You seem to be quite smitten with Uzumaki-kun. You're looking too far into things again, Akeno, commented the red-haired devil. He's just very charismatic for a human. Too carefree, commented Koneko as she took a bite out of some candy. Not serious enough. Kage gave the white-haired girl a smile and commented, I think he was actually very serious. He seems like the type to have others underestimate them and find out their real strength too late. But just how strong is he? Asked Issei, crossing his arms. He just seemed like a goofball. Rias bit her bottom lip, an idea coming to her that seemed too crazy to go through with. I think I could answer that. But she gave them all a serious look. Even Akeno, I need you all to have an open mind about this. What I'll be suggesting will sound crazy, even by devil standards. So, I want your word that you won't judge me based on my theory. Rias, you already know the answer to that, Akeno stated, using her friend's name to show that she was serious. Koneko and Kage nodded alongside her, showing the Gremory heiress their support. You showed me enough craziness already, commented Issei with a small chuckle. I think I can handle some more. I would never judge you, Bucho, Aisha promised with a smile. Rias smiled back at them. Thank you. Now, follow me, she said before she began to lead them to her collection room. I have to say, whatever these things are definitely have high tastes, commented Kurama as he looked through Naruto's eyes. An actual castle for a home seems a bit much though. I think this lady's king is pretty high up in this place's political food chain. Naruto, you should know that I can barely sense anyone that has chakra to use. I know. There's a chance that you, Kurama, interrupted Naruto as he followed Grieving through the halls of the Gremory estate. I know, but I can't give up on there being a chance. I just can't. The fox was silent after that, knowing that his friend needed a moment to himself. He knew better than anyone that Naruto was never one to give up, no matter the stakes or obstacles. It was what made the Bijou choose to believe in him. So, he would do what he could to help support the man he called his friend. Grieving stopped outside of a room and turned back to Naruto. In here is where you will talk to my king. I must reiterate that you're a guest here that could be a potential enemy to us. I know that, replied Naruto. And I promise to not cause trouble. Now, can we please go in so that I can speak to him? The woman looked him dead in the eye for a few moments before she nodded and opened the double doors, presenting a red-headed man in regal attire sitting behind a desk and going over paperwork. Naruto immediately saw the relation between the man and Rias and assumed that the man was either her father or her brother. Sir Zek-sama, started Grieving with a formal bow, I have brought the man I messaged you about. The man looked up from his desk, smiling at the maid. Grieving-chan, you don't need to be so formal, you know. You're not just my maid, after all. Naruto had to bite back a chuckle as he saw the woman's brow twitch at the man's laid-back attitude. Still, he cleared his throat and stepped forward. Sasuke-san, my name is Naruto Uzumaki and I'm from a place known as the Hidden Leaf Village which resides in the Elemental Nations. I was hoping you could tell me how to get back there since I was sent away by someone who I once considered a friend and brother. The man cupped his chin in thought, going over all the places that he knew. I'm not sure I can help you, Naruto-san. You see, I've heard and been to hundreds of different places, and I don't recall anything about a Hidden Leaf Village or these Elemental Nations. He then gave the blonde a concerned look, asking, are you sure that these places you've mentioned exist? Of course they exist, damn it! Yelled Naruto, glaring at the man heatedly. Those places are my home and I've already had one asshole insult it within 5 minutes of me arriving here. I meant no offense, placated Sasuke as he raised his hands up. I'm just unsure how I can help you when I've never heard of such places. But I must ask, how can a human such as yourself have such vast stores of chakra within them? All people in the elemental nations use chakra. It's not just an energy to us, it's a life force. I see. Then this makes what I'm about to say even more difficult. He sighed before looking Naruto in the eye, declaring, no such places exist in our world or in the human one. A whole nation full of chakra users would have been found easily by us or others, and the location wouldn't be unknown. The blonde grit his teeth and clenched his eyes tightly, tightening his shaking fist to rein in his anger. Damn it! I was hoping you wouldn't say that, he stated before he started to murmur to himself. If that's true, then Sasuke's Kamu must have been more potent than Obito's. There's no way I can get home. I'm sorry, Naruto. Don't be, Kurama. I knew that this could have been a possibility. But seriously, a different world entirely? That's just not right. Fucking Rinnegan and its cheap power boosts. He mentally grumbled. Naruto-san, Sasuke said, getting the blonde's attention. Your home may not exist here, but we are able to travel between our world and the human one connected to us at will. If we were to put more effort into figuring out the links between worlds, it could be possible for us to help you. What are you guys anyway? Asked Naruto, cutting him off before he could continue. You admit you're not human, and I can tell by the energy you give off. That's true. In fact, our energy is seen as much darker than most, especially to those who are religious. You see, we are devils. Devils? Asked Naruto with a raised brow before taking a seat in the chair Grafia offered him. Nodding to her in thanks, he continued, so what, is this hell or something? Because if it is, then it's not as bad as I thought it'd be. The man chuckled and sat down at his desk. Yes, this is the underworld, or hell. I hope you're comfortable because this explanation will take a while. It was around an hour later that Sasuke finally finished telling Naruto about the devils, angels, and fallen angels, fallen for short. He told the Uzumaki about how God existed and how the devils have for great satans instead of just one in religion. Then he went on to explain items known as sacred gears, and finally the evil peace system, which explained why Grafia referred to him as he king. All right, I understand what you've told me, began Naruto as he took a drink of the water Grafia gave him, but I have another question. If you're supposedly the strongest devil both politically and physically, then why can't you stop this arranged marriage that your relative seems to hate so much? You mean my sister Rias Tan? He asked in slight surprise. When did you meet her? When he arrived, explained Grafia, it was during the meeting between her and Rias-sama. Rias-sama seemed to know about Uzumaki-san some. Is that so? The man then cupped his chin and leaned back in his chair. To answer your question, Naruto-san, I can't help because a leader cannot pick favorites, even from their own kin. I can't interfere in this because of that, not to mention how it's meant to save both our houses from dying out. Still, if I were in your position, I'd say to screw politics and help my family. Policy isn't eternal, but family is damn near close to it, commented Naruto, making Sasuke smile. True. However, I never said I wasn't going to help her. The politics in play just make me have to be sneaky about it. You told me you were a ninja, right? The blonde nodded. Well, how would you like to help me out? Naruto saw the gleam in the man's eyes and couldn't help the grin that formed on his face. What did you have in mind? A pair of grey eyes slowly opened and a short girl took sight of the Vatican City of Rome. She was dressed in an outfit that was fit for gothic Lolita girls, but hers left her torso bare save for two black, X-shaped covers over her nipples. The girl looked down from her perch atop the main church while a black cat rested on her shoulder. "Kuroka," spoke the girl calmly. "I have a job for you." The cat jumped off of the girl and landed on the roof behind her before she transformed into a more humanoid figure. She was a young woman with a voluptuous figure, long black hair with split bangs, and hazel eyes with cat-like pupils. Her attire consisted of a black kimono, a yellow obi, a set of golden beads, and an ornately detailed headband. The kimono featured a red interior, and it was open at her shoulders, giving view to her large breasts which had plenty of size. She also had a pair of cat ears on her head and two black cat tails. "Naya Tilda," she moaned as she stretched her arms over her head. "What do you need, Ophis-sama?" Earlier, someone with a tremendous level of chakra appeared in Japan. They then disappeared with one of the higher-level devils to what I can assume to be the underworld. Turning to the Nekomata, the gothic girl continued, "I want you to head over to Japan and observe the person. Sway them to my cause in any way you can." "Sure thing, Naya," replied Kuroka before she opened her own portal and prepared to leave. Before she did, she turned back to her boss and asked, "I can check on my little Shironi-chan too, right?" Ophis didn't look at her as she answered, "So long as you focus on the task I've given you, I see no problem with that." "Thanks, boss, Naya." She then left Rome, heading over to Kuo in Japan. "You honestly expect me to allow that trash to take part in the rating game? He's a human, and a common fool at that," argued Riza as he stood before Sasuke, Grieving, and Naruto. "True, he is human. However, this, the red-headed Satan held up a strange piece, will allow Naruto-san to temporarily become a pawn for a devil's peerage and take part in a rating game. Besides," the man smiled at the blonde devil before him, "are you saying that one more person fighting you will be that big of an issue?" Riza scowled at the jab at his pride. "I'm not saying that at all, Lucifer-sama." He then turned to Naruto, who was smirking at him, and glared. "Very well, but I want another stake to be added to this game." "Go on," Sasuke said. "When I win, this fool will forever serve me without question," the Phoenix declared as he pointed at Naruto. "I'm fine with that," agreed Naruto. "And if you lose?" "I won't," stated the other blonde firmly. "Let's just say that you do," continued Naruto. "What happens then?" Sasuke and Grieving watched on silently, though the redhead held back his own smirk at how well his plan was going. Riza then snapped his fingers, and a woman appeared from the Phoenix family portal. She was a busty woman with long, wavy purple hair that fell all the way down her back and matching eyes. At the front, the right side of her hair fell over her breast and covered her right eye, while the left side falls near the top of her skirt. Her attire was a dress consisting of a navy blue tunic top with gold accents, a pale blue skirt with open sides, and black shoes over matching thigh-high stockings with garter belts. The top revealed much of her cleavage and was held with a gold choker with blue and red jewels. Over this, she wore a white overcoat with black and gold accents and matching pauldrons. For accessories, she wore a black headband with a red-orange jewel over her forehead to keep her long hair in place, and wielded a staff-like scepter in battle. For cosmetics, she wears purple lipstick, matching her eyes and hair. "If I lose, which, again, won't happen, I'll offer up my queen, Yuba Luna," stated Riza, shocking the woman at his statement. "Ah, Riza-sama!" She cried out in protest, but she then shrunk back when the Phoenix turned to her with a heated look. Bowing her head, she stepped back behind her, "King. You really are a bastard, aren't you?" asked Naruto angrily, making Yuba Luna look up from behind the Phoenix. It was only then that she realized that the blonde man from before was challenging her, "King. How could you just offer up your queen like that? She is my piece to do with as I please. Now, do you accept or not, trash?" The Uzumaki frowned at the other blonde before nodding slowly. "Fine, I accept. Besides, you just gave me another reason to kick your ass." "Oh? Yeah? I'm gonna get Red-chan out of this arranged marriage, and I'm also gonna free an innocent queen from the asshole she calls her king. You can count on it." Yuba Luna looked to the Uzumaki in surprise at his conviction before a small smile crossed her face. Riza scoffed at the declaration before turning to Sasuke. "I'll let him fight for Rias. It'll be a privilege to roast him alive on the battlefield." "Excellent," replied Sasuke with a smile. "Well, I'll see you in 2 weeks, Riza-san. Come along, Naruto-san." I need to take you back to Rias so that you can train with her peerage. Right, answered the whiskered blonde before he left with Sasuke and Grafia, giving Ubaluna one last smile before he disappeared. Riza scoffed again and headed back inside his family's estate, leaving the queen outside staring at where the strange blonde man once stood. The smile from before reformed on her face and she thought to herself, I hope you win, Naruto Uzumaki. She then headed inside with a small spring in her step. 2 weeks would be over in the blink of an eye, and she wanted to be ready for the rating game that was coming. The first thing Naruto took in when the portal closed was the sight of many trees and some mountainous terrain. Turning around, he saw a manor fit for a noble vacation home and sighed. Do rich people, even devils, have to flaunt their wealth? He asked, making Sasuke sweat drop and Grafia raise a brow. I didn't think the house was all that fancy when it was built, the red-headed Satan tried to reason. Maybe it's just me then. I never had much money back home. Hell, my apartment was in one of the poorer districts. He shrugged and then turned back to his temporary host. So, you said Red-chan and her peerage were planning on training here to face Mr. Personality, right? Precisely. Knowing my sister, she'll focus on her newest pieces since they would need the most help. They should all be here in a moment or two. Not even a minute after he said that, another couple of portals bearing the Gremory house crest appeared before Rias and her peerage stepped through them. As soon as they saw the trio, the younger Gremory stepped forward. Nisama, what are you doing here? Smiling, the man channeled his inner Siskon and hugged his sibling tightly, making her turn as red as their hair in embarrassment as he squeezed her. Oh, Rias-tan. I've missed you so much. Why don't you visit your Nisama? Sweat dropping, the blonde Uzumaki turned to the Silverette queen and asked, does this happen a lot? Unfortunately, the woman sighed before she stepped forward and dragged her husband off of his sister by his cheek, stretching it painfully and making him struggle to get loose. Sasuke-sama, this is neither the time nor place for such foolish antics. Your sister is waiting for you to explain why we're here. She then let go of his cheek, and the Satan rubbed the mark that had begun to form there. Spoil sport, he mumbled before a sharp look from his wife cowed him. He then cleared his throat and turned to his sister. To answer your question, I'm here to drop off Naruto-san so that he may train with you and your peerage. But why would he train with us? He's not a devil, and he's not a part of my peerage, Rias replied, though she mentally added, unfortunately. Ah, but he will be for the rating game, answered Sasuke. You see, there were a couple of experimental pieces that Beelzebub made that allowed non-devils to temporarily join a peerage for events such as ratings games. They wouldn't become full devils, and they'd only be classified as pawns, but it could help peerages that have fewer members fill in their ranks for a single event. In this case, Naruto-san will temporarily become your pawn for the rating game. The younger devils were surprised by the ingenuity of the temporary piece and Akeno stepped forward. Lucifer-sama, what happens to Uzumaki-kun when the game ends? The piece disappears and nothing else happens. He doesn't become a devil and stays human. Why wasn't something like this mentioned before, Lucifer-sama? Asked Kiba. Because it has only recently been perfected for use. This rating game will be used to help promote them so that other devils can utilize them, though Beelzebub expects compensation for each one made. Rias was ecstatic. She now had another person to help her against Riza, and if he really was like Menma from the Hurricane Chronicles, then he'd mop the floor with the pompous prick. Turning to Naruto, she smiled brightly and bowed to him. Thank you so much for doing this. The Uzumaki chuckled and shook his head. Don't thank me. It was your brother's idea after all. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she turned to Sasuke who smiled at her. I may not have been able to act publicly, but that doesn't mean I won't help my sister in secret. All I did was play on Riza-san's pride. He then blinked when he felt his sister hug him, without himself initiating it. Looking down, he saw her smiling warmly and heard her say, "Thank you, Onii-chan." He smiled back and rubbed her head affectionately. No problem, Imuto. Naruto, Rias's peerage, and even Grafia smiled at the scene before Rias pulled back. So, Naruto-san will be training with us and take part in the game, and we have 2 weeks, supplied the Satan. 2 weeks. I can work with that. She then turned to her peerage and said, you all can go unpack inside. We'll start training in a moment. They nodded and headed inside, though Akeno made sure to give Naruto a flirty wink that he didn't react to. Kurama, from the seal, palmed his muzzle and groaned. his as dense as Isobu's shell, he mumbled with a shake of his head. Naruto-san, began the Gremory heiress, I want to talk to you for a moment before we start training with the others. Sure thing, replied the blonde before turning to Surzex and Grafia. Thanks for the lift and for explaining things to me. I hope you guys can figure a way for me to get back home. We'll do what we can, but this kind of research won't be easy. You'll need to be patient with us, Naruto-san, explained the elder Gremory. Naruto nodded in understanding and he turned to his sister. Best of luck, Rias-tan. I really hope you win. I will, stated Rias confidently, giving a sideways glance at Naruto. I know I will. The man chuckled at his sister before he left with his queen back to the underworld. Once they left, Naruto turned to his new host and asked, so, what did you want to talk about? The young woman took a deep breath and looked the blonde in the eye, making him frown in concern. I want to show you something that might shock you, but I need to know if the theory I have about you is true, Menma-san. His eyes widened slightly before they narrowed again sharply. Giving a slow nod, he followed her inside the manor. A groan was heard and the last living Unspoken of the world opened his eyes blearily within a prison cell beneath the hidden leaf mountainside. A frown crossed his face as his vision felt off before his brows rose in shock and his left hand shot to his left eye. Except, the eye wasn't there and an empty socket was all he felt. In his shock, he also missed the visitor he had outside of his cell before a woman was heard clearing her throat. He turned to the source and his remaining eye met the furious honey-colored eyes of Tsunade Senju. Sasuke, you are beyond lucky to be alive right now, she growled out as her fingers pressed hard into her crossed arms, showing her barely restrained rage. As you have no doubt noticed, your left eye has been removed from you. What you don't know is that we took your right eye as well and replaced it with one from someone recently passed. At this, she held up a handheld mirror, letting the Unspoken see that his once onyx eye was now a dull brown color. He looked at his own reflection in shock as the Senju tossed the mirror at his feet. You really are an idiot. You had just been dismissed of everything charged against you because of Naruto, and what did you do? He was silent, which made her clench her hands hard enough to crack the knuckles. Answer me. What did you do? He flinched at her roar and looked up at her face, seeing pure and unfiltered anger in her eyes. I got rid of him, answered Sasuke. That's what I did. I took care of the one person who always stood in my way and tried to butt into things that didn't concern him. Her eyes narrowed at him and she asked calmly, does the friendship that you once had with Naruto and Sakura mean so little to you? I severed those bonds long ago. I don't need them and I never did, stubbornly answered the Unspoken. Again, you're an idiot. You're saying you didn't need them at all against Obito? How about against Madara? Kaguya and that black Zetsu? Each question made Sasuke clench his fists tighter and tighter. He knew what she was pointing out, but his pride wouldn't let him give her the satisfaction of admission. Shaking her head, Tsunade turned around and made her way out of the visiting area outside of his cell. Your chakra has been completely sealed off by the best sealers in all 5 of the hidden villages. You sent away a hero and a friend of all nations, Unspoken, and now you're going to rot in here for it. Turning back, she gave him a harsh look and finished, I wonder how long you'll last as you slowly starve to death. The great Unspoken clan. What a waste, and how shamed your ancestors must be for spitting on any chance for redemption. The door closed harshly, and the cell was left shrouded in shadows as Sasuke sat in solitude. No food, water, or bed were supplied to him. Sitting against one of the walls, he reached a hand up and traced the socket of his empty left eye. He did nothing else as he finally got what he had sought after, the darkness, the cruel, lonely darkness. Naruto looked down at the table before him in shock, eyes wide and mouth agape. Before him rested a book that had his picture on it along with Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi, and Kaguya. What the hell is this? He whispered out as he turned the pages, seeing illustrations of the final fights of the 4th Great Ninja War. It's your story, answered Rias softly as she sat across from where he stood. In that, you're known as Menma Uzumaki, the son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, finished Naruto as he set the book down. Yeah, I know. I met my other self once before in an alternate reality from my own. The only difference is that everyone from his version of my life was different in some manner or way. What does that have to do with this? He shook the manga book for emphasis. Well, if he's you then that book is the last one of his story. But everyone else in the book is exactly how they are in my world. Argued Naruto. Only my character has changes to them and that's my parents being alive. He slammed the book down on a page where it showed Menma and his new wife, Hinata, posing for a photo alongside Minato and Kushina. Rias looked at the page in sad realization, knowing that this had to be nothing short of frustrating to the blonde before her. "Your parents weren't alive in your life," she murmured. I thought that what?" interrupted Naruto angrily. "That I was some kind of storybook character that you knew everything about? Well, sorry to say that I'm not Menma. I am Naruto, nobody else." "I'm not saying that you are." Rias tried to reason. "I just wanted you to know why I know about you and your life." "But you don't know," firmly stated the Uzumaki as he stood over her, making her nervous. "You only know a character from some story. You don't know me." With that, he turned and left, slamming the door behind him as Rias looked at the book on the table sadly. Slowly, she grabbed it and looked at the cover for a few moments. "He's right," she thought to herself, feeling ashamed. "How could I be so stupid as to think that he was the same as Menma?" She scowled at the book, her hand trembling in her growing anger, and threw it across the room with an enraged shout before she buried her face in her hands. The one person who could help me, and I might have made him decide against it in the span of 1 hour. Smooth move, Rias. You're such an idiot. Removing her hands, she took a deep breath before she stood up and left the room. Walking down the halls, she saw that the man she had just angered was sitting on the grass outside the window. He was silent for a few more moments before he finally asked, "You know something?" She saw him open his eyes and, to her surprise, give a small smile. "You don't know about me personally, but you might know enough for this to work." "For what to work?" she asked. "A friendship," he answered, simply making her look to him in shock. "I had friends back in my world, but they didn't really know me other than what they saw on the outside. They didn't know what I feared, what I loved, and what I had really experienced. And now, I meet a devil who read a story that was so much like my life that it could almost count as being with me throughout it." "But it isn't your life," reminded Rias. "You said that yourself." "It's close, though," he relented before he rubbed his head. "I may have overreacted back there since I thought you only saw me as some character and not myself." He turned to her and continued, "I can see in your eyes that you hate that too, not having an identity other than what you were born with. I'm guessing you were only known as the heiress, right?" She slowly nodded. "It was frustrating, wasn't it?" She nodded again, looking down as she recalled her past. "Yes. I hated it, and I left home for it. Here, I'm just known as Rias, and it makes me happy." She then looked back at him, and he saw the epiphany in her eyes. "I realize now I was doing the same thing that I hated to you. And I forgive you for that," he stated with a warm smile. "Just don't assume anything about me anymore, okay?" "All right," she replied with a smile in return before she stuck out her hand. "How about we start over? I'm Rias Gremory. Nice to meet you." His smile grew into a grin and he shook her hand. "Naruto Uzumaki. So, why don't we talk about Mr. Personality?" A black cat walked through the sidewalks and alleyways of the city of Kuo. It sniffed around and avoided the many humans that walked the busy streets when in reality it was using a different method of searching. One of its ears twitched as well as its tail before the cat smiled in a way that was too human-like. "Found you," thought Kuroka as she leapt up to a building rooftop and gazed towards the mountains with her gleaming amber orbs. "Wow! Their chakra levels are much stronger than I thought. And is that Senjutsu?" The Nekomata kept her smile at that. For too long she had believed herself unable to find anyone else who would be able to use the infamous natural energy known as Senjutsu. So, sensing another that could was beyond exciting to her. Focusing her demonic energy into her cat limbs, she disappeared in a blur in search of the source. "I can't wait to see who you are. I hope you're a cute one, Naya." So, he's from a family that has fire-based powers and can recover from intensive attacks easily. Kinda arrogant to be named after the bird of legend, don't you think? Not the point, deadpanned Rias, though she couldn't help the smirk at his comment. "Do you think you can take him?" "As much as I hate to admit it, I won't be able to buy myself." "You think I back down from this?" "Come on, I took on people who were practically demigods. This guy will be easy." "I'm glad you're so confident, but what about the rest of us?" "I was hoping you could help us out." The blonde cupped his chin in thought at the request. "Well, I think I could help. But I'm not much of a teacher, to be honest. At most, I could point out some things that they could use to help." "That's good enough," assured Rias with a smile. Just having you here helps more than you think. You're assuming again, chided Naruto playfully, making her smack his arm lightly. You know what I mean. He laughed at the pout she had on her face, waving her off with one hand. Yeah, I know. Don't worry. We'll take down that bastard and end that marriage contract, Red-chan. Count on it. She smiled at his words, feeling her own confidence raising from them. Okay, I'll go get the others and bring them out here. We'll go over training when we're all here. Got it, replied Naruto as Rias went inside. Once she was out of earshot, he went over to a tree and looked up, spotting a black cat on one of its branches. You know, you're pretty lucky that Red-chan can't really sense chakra like I can. I am lucky, Naya, replied the feline with a grin. I get you all to myself for a moment. And what exactly did you want with me? Ah, of course. I'm Kuroka, Naya. Nice to meet you. Likewise, and I'm Naruto Uzumaki, replied the blonde with a smile. So, I thought that chakra was a rare energy in this world? Oh, it is. But you see, we Nekomata can use it along with a few other neat things. Aren't we great? She asked in a proud tone, though Naruto noted that it wasn't arrogant. That is pretty cool. But you never really answered what you wanted with me, Kuroka. True, but I'll wait on that. You're pretty busy at the moment, Naya. She stood up on her paws and jumped down from the tree, landing next to him. Do me a favor though, don't tell anyone I was here. Why? Are you some kind of criminal? Well, I am in the eyes of many devils. But I only did what needed to be done for my sister. She looked up at him with pleading in her feline eyes. Please, just keep this quiet, especially from her. She feels like that little white-haired girl that's with Rias, commented Kurama. No doubt she's this Kuroka's sister. I see. I thought I felt something familiar from her. He nodded to the black cat with a small smile. I won't say anything, promise. Also, I'll keep an eye on your sister if you want. Please, urged Kuroka, making him nod again. Thank you. Now, I'll come find you sometime tonight and talk to you. I'm not your enemy. Uzumaki-kun, trust me, Naya. With that, she leapt off into the foliage of the surrounding woodlands, and just in time, for Rias was returning with her friends so that Naruto could oversee their training. Akeno was known for two things by her friends, her flirtatious antics and her sadism. It was something she had no issue with at all since she loved to tease others and make them uncomfortable. But what many didn't know was that this was mainly just an act. In truth, Akeno Himejima was a very fragile girl. Her past heritage was a sore subject for her, and her past before she was taken in by the Gremory house was something that still brought her close to tears. But she didn't let anyone in because they could prove to let her down just as he did. Her antics were just an emotional mask, one that Naruto easily saw through as he saw how she interacted with her friends. He knew about emotional masks since he had worn one himself for some time. He started out as a Jinchuriki, a human sacrifice that was used to hold and contain a biju. Hiding the pain he felt was something he needed to do in order to get by as a child. So, in order to try and get to the root of her issue, he had left clones with the others while he personally went with the queen. All right, Akeno, let's see what you can do. I'll be sure to impress you, sensei, she said, adding a sultry undertone to the title she gave him. I'm a queen earpiece, but I suppose you could say that I'm more of a balanced bishop. I prefer to utilize my magic in a fight, leaning more towards lightning, but I can still fight without it to a degree. Okay, show me your magic. She nodded before she summoned forth her Miko outfit and began to rain down bolts of electricity on a tree a few yards ahead of her. Naruto and Kurama watched how she used it, but the blonde also made sure to see the girl's expression as she used her magic. To his concern, she seemed to be pouring negative emotions into it, as seen by the pent-up anger and sorrow in her eyes. Most wouldn't look at her eyes when she attacked, being more focused on the lightning that was about to fry them. It was definitely a red flag to him. All right, that's enough, he said, and she complied after one last bolt before quickly schooling her features. For starters, you're skilled with your magic and I don't think we really need to work on it. Thank you, she replied with a smile. However, your source for your magic is concerning. She barely stopped herself from flinching at his statement. What do you mean? The source for all magic is our own reserves. True, but that's not what I meant, and you know it. He gave her a serious look that made her avert her gaze. Sighing, he took a seat on the grass and waved for her to do the same. Akeno, you're pouring a lot of anger and sadness into your attack. It may give you focus, but it could seriously hamper you. What do you know? She retorted, but her tone was much softer than she normally used. I bet you don't have anything you hate. Not true, he countered. There are plenty of things I hate. However, I don't use my hatred because I've seen what it does to people. Reaching over, he thumbed her cheek and wiped away a stray tear that was rolling down. Her eyes were wide as she looked at him, seeing him give her a small smile of encouragement. Don't let your anger control you, Akeno. It isn't worth it. What do you mean? She asked, looking confused. Sighing, he pulled his hand back, much to her disappointment, and said, I once had a friend named Sasuke who gave in to his hatred. In the end, he threw away every chance he had at happiness, he even killed the man he believed to be the source of his hatred. But it wasn't enough for him, and his anger at me for trying to stop him was what drove him into sending me away. She looked to him in surprise, while he looked down sadly. It showed in his expression that he was still hurting from the betrayal, and she couldn't help but wonder if she would one day hurt her friends in her anger. She hugged her knees and looked to him sadly. What should I do? He scooted over to her side, sitting down right next to her so that she could lean on him. Talk to me. Why are you angry, Akeno? Taking a breath, the troubled young woman began her story. She had been born as the only child of Shuri Himejima, a well-known Shinto priestess, and Barakiel, a fallen angel and one of the leaders of the fallen angel organization, Grigory. As a child, Akeno was close to her mother, and she fell into despair when she witnessed her mother's death. Her anger had stemmed from blaming her father for not being able to protect her mother. After the death of Shuri, she stayed with her mother's relatives before being kicked out due to her fallen blood. It wasn't until she was 10 that she traveled to Japan and spent 1.5 years purifying evil spirits like her mother. One day though, she had saved a human that was in a contract with the Gremory house, something she had no knowledge of until it was too late. After that, I went into hiding because I thought that they would kill me, she continued. Because you were half fallen? Asked the blonde, making her nod. Yes. But then the Himejima clan found me and tried to kill me because of my cursed blood. She was already crying as she continued, and Naruto wrapped his arm around her for comfort. She leaned into him more as she continued through her tears. My granduncle was going to finish me off before Rias found me. Since then, I've been serving the Gremory house, and I doubt I could ever repay them for saving my life. But you still hate your father, finished Naruto, which she nodded to. You know, for a time I hated my father too. You see, he was the one who gave me what was once a burden, and I ended up being seen as a living symbol of what had once nearly brought my home to ruin. Not my fault, you know, grumbled Kurama. Oi. I'm trying to comfort someone here, he mentally yelled back before refocusing on Akeno. He could have done something else, but he made me into a living sacrifice for our home. I won't lie, when I had finally met him, I punched him. Why didn't you do more? Asked Akeno. Because I had finally understood the position he was in. He was a leader of our village, and he couldn't have asked for another family to sacrifice their own if he wasn't willing to do the same. He squeezed her shoulder gently as he continued, I'm not saying that you need to forgive your father right away. All I'm saying is don't put all of your anger on him until you know the whole story. But what if I don't like what the whole story is? She asked, slightly anxious. She saw him give her a sad smile as he answered, I honestly can't answer that. All I can tell you is that if you hold on to this anger you feel, you'll destroy yourself. I've seen far too many people do it already. I don't want to see another person give in to their hatred and pain. She was silent as she leaned against him. The whole time, her thoughts were running a mile a minute, and she began to see what it was that the blonde human next to her was saying. It would be hard, but she would try to keep from falling into her hatred. How do I start? She asked, turning to him just in time to see him smile brightly at her, causing her cheeks to flush warmly. Standing her up and wiping her remaining tears, he said, for starters, focus on that positive feeling you had when you were with your mother. You know what that is? She shook her head and he smiled a bit softer. It's love. Shuri loved you, Akeno, and you loved her more than anything. Focus on that feeling of love and try your lightning again. He then turned her around slowly, squeezing her shoulders gently, as he had her face another tree. She stared down at the tree and took a few breaths, each one bringing up another happy memory she had with her mother and making her smile brighter. After one last breath, she was smiling truer than she had ever done before, and, with a happy tear rolling down her cheek, she summoned forth her lightning. Naruto couldn't contain the grin on his face as he saw her magic strike down like a true flash of the heavens. Koneko was not one for words, and everyone who knew her was aware of that fact. It was because of her silent nature that many people couldn't get a read on her. So, it was no surprise that the clone Naruto had left with the small girl was confused at how wary she was of him. Koneko? He asked. Everything okay? You're full of chakra, she answered after a small pause. Chakra's dangerous. Well, yeah, I suppose it can be dangerous. But that's only when it's used in the wrong ways. He saw that she was staying quiet and sighed. Look, Koneko, you have nothing to fear about the chakra inside you. It's a part of you, so you control what it does. But it made her crazy, retorted the young Nico. You mean your sister, don't you? He asked, making her widen her eyes in shock. I don't know the story about her, but I do know that whatever she did couldn't have been done without a reason. She looked away and clenched her fists, making him frown sadly. She left? Killed her, king, and ran away. Devil said it was because of her using chakra and senjutsu. Senjutsu? Asked Naruto. Why would she go crazy if she was using natural energy? He saw her shuffle her feet nervously. I tried it once. It was scary. She hugged herself and continued, so much negativity. Negativity? Koneko, natural energy isn't full of negativity. It's supposed to be a positive energy that synchronizes with your own chakra. He stepped up to her, and she looked up to see him looking into her eyes with concern. Were you angry when you were trying it? She slowly nodded, unable to look away. Yes. I was mad at her for leaving. Then that's why you felt that negativity. Chakra is affected by your emotional state, Koneko. In your anger, when you tried to use senjutsu, it latched onto that anger and intensified it. That's why it scared you so much. She finally looked away, turning fully so that her back was to him. He saw that she was shaking slightly, and he stepped up before gently grabbing her shoulder. You won't go crazy, Koneko. So long as you control your emotions, you'll be just fine, I promise. I've used chakra my entire life. It's a part of me to the point where I depend on it to live. The only times I lost control were when I was feeling extreme anger. She turned her head to see him smiling at her. If you need me to, I'll stop you from losing control. You have my word. Her yellow eyes stared dead into his blue ones, seeing nothing but sincerity in them. Slowly, she nodded as she said, okay. But I want to see your chakra first. He blinked at the request before smiling. All right. Stand back for a moment. Once she was back far enough, he mentally called out, Kurama? Yeah, I know. We'll stick to the chakra mode, 1, for now. The blonde clone nodded before his form became enshrouded in a flickering gold energy that had black markings on his torso. His eyes were a deep orange with slit pupils, and 2 bangs shot upward in the form of horns. He flexed his implanted arm when he saw that the sun mark that Hagoromo gave him was visible and in a bright orange color on his palm. Koneko was looking on in shock at how warm and protective his chakra was. It made her natural senses go into overdrive, and she had to fight herself to stop from releasing her Nico features. He grinned at her and asked, so, you ready to try out your own chakra? She nodded slowly as she still fought to keep herself calm. Yes, I am. Good. He replied with a smile as he dropped his chakra mode. He then had them sit across from one another and instructed, now, let's start with getting a feel for your chakra first. I want you to relax and sense it inside of you. Nodding, she closed her eyes and took her first real steps in chakra control. Naruto sat on the roof of the manor after he had finished eating dinner with the devils. He had to admit that they were impressive, though that Isegai reminded him way too much of Jiraiya. He even got motivated in the same way his old master did, using Naruko-chan to ask nicely. But, while he was a shameless pervert, he still had an impressive dedication to Rias. At first he thought he was acting out of perverseness, but the young man surprised him. I won't do nothing when a friend of mine needs my help. That's not me, and it never will be. He smirked as he remembered Issei's words, being reminded of how he was for his own friends. Next was Aisha, and she reminded him so much of Hinata that they could probably be the same person. She was a gentle soul who despised seeing anyone fight, and she would rather see a peaceful solution than take up arms. But, whereas Hinata fought and was a skilled kunoichi, Aisha was a healer. She was afraid of hurting anyone else, even if they were her enemy, and it made him smile. So, he had her focus on aerobics and evasion. With the aerobics, she would be able to weave around attacks and wear down an attacker enough for someone else to come in and finish them off. However, that didn't mean he was leaving her defenseless in case she was on her own. While different in many ways, devil magic was slightly similar to chakra, and he was able to teach her how to use her own magic to push someone back. In a way, it was like a much weaker version of the almighty push that a Rinnegan user was capable of using, and was able to help her defend from both enemies and attacks. Akeno and Koneko were both already on a path that was beneficial to them, and he believed they just needed to keep at it for the rest of the 2 weeks. Kiba was pretty skilled with his sacred gear and air knight speed, but Naruto told him to work on his reaction time and reflexes. If he could act as fast as he could move, then he'd be that much more a force to be reckoned with. "Nice night, isn't it, Naya?" asked a familiar voice, making him turn to see Kuroka sitting on the ledge next to him. "Yeah, it is," he answered, turning back to the moon. "Your reputation has done a number on your sister, you know. She's afraid of using chakra and senjutsu." "I figured," she replied as she looked up with him. "I saw how you helped her, by the way. Thank you for that. I was afraid that she would deny who she was for the rest of her life. You'll have to talk to her at some point. She needs to know the truth from you and not from some rumors." "I know," sighed the Nico. "I'm still waiting for the right time. That time won't exist if you keep stalling." He then turned to her and offered, "If you want, I could help you talk to her after this rating game. I think she should focus on this for the moment." "You do that?" she asked in surprise. "But why help someone you just met?" He laughed at her question, holding his side as he did so. "You'd be surprised how many times I've actually done that. You are far from the first person I helped the same day I met them." She blinked at his response before she slowly smiled. His chakra felt so warm and bright. It was like the sun she loved to bathe in so much, or a nice warm fire she could curl up next to. But then a thought came to her as she remembered something. "You mentioned senjutsu. Can you use it?" "Yeah, I can use it. I was trained by toads to harness the natural energy of the world." "Toads?" asked Kuroka with a sweat drop. "Long story, but the point is that I can use it," stated the blonde. "Why do you ask? Can you show me how you do it? We Nekomata use the nature around us to enhance our attacks." "How do you use it?" The Uzumaki didn't answer her. Instead, he took a breath and calmed himself. To her surprise, his energy faded and began to mix itself with the natural energies surrounding her. He was practically invisible to her even though he was sitting right next to her. When he opened his eyes, she saw that they were so similar to the animals he said taught him. They also had orange markings around the eyelids, giving them even more of a toad-like appearance. "This is my sage mode. I take in the natural energy and mix it with my own natural chakra coils. It enhances both my body and my attacks while also giving me a much more heightened sense of awareness. I can feel the energy signatures of everyone within a few miles of my position." "Wow," she breathed out, feeling the same thing Koneko was before. However, instead of fighting the feeling, Kuroka embraced it and let the feeling wash over her. While this happened, she was unaware that she had lost focus on her transformation and returned to her natural form. The blonde watching her couldn't help but blush at the beautiful woman now standing before him with her golden eyes clouded by the feeling of senjutsu. He cut off the flow and released his sage mode, making her blink back into focus before pouting at him cutely. "Mao, did you have to stop? It felt so good, Naya Tilda." He blushed again at how her wording could be taken as he rubbed his head sheepishly. "Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't know it would affect you so much." She smirked at him before striding over and draping her arms over and around his shoulders, enjoying the flustered blush on his face and the feel of his muscles pressing against her generous assets. "Oh, I didn't mind at all, Naruto-kun," she commented, purring out his name as her twin tails swayed happily. "Your energy from both before and now are so addicting, though." She then leaned in and whispered into his ear, "You're intoxicating." His blush was as red as his mother's hair as he stood straight, too tense to do anything else. Oh, he stuttered out. Thanks, I guess." She giggled at his flustered state before she pulled away, mentally berating herself for doing so. "Don't worry, Naruto-kun. I said that I wasn't your enemy, and I meant it." Besides, I owe you some answers, right? He nodded as his blush calmed down. Well, for starters, I'm a criminal for killing my king, that I was a bishop for. He made a threat to use my sister against me when she was just a child, and I acted first before I left her with the Gremory house. And the rumors about you going crazy? Asked the blonde. Those were his surviving peerage members that saw that I was using chakra and senjutsu to kill him. They spread the rumors to have me branded as a criminal and seen as crazy. I see. Well, I can tell right now that you're anything but crazy. Your chakra is very calm and you seem to be more intelligent than most. Thank you, Naya. She replied with a feline grin that hid the small blush she had from his praise. It's nice to have someone believe me about this. Now, the reason I'm here is to observe you for my boss. Observe me? He asked with a chuckle. Don't you need to be more discreet about observations? She pouted at him. Kinda hard when the one you're observing can sense others just as easily as you can. Hee. True, he relented. So, who's your boss? She's known as the Infinity Dragon Goddess, Ophis. She doesn't look like much to most people, but trust me when I say that she's strong, very strong. She has devils, fallen, some angels, and even some humans who are descended from legends on her side. All I know is that she wants to take down some other dragon who kicked her out of her own home. I see. Well, if she's trying to recruit me, I'd prefer to talk to her personally. No offense to you, but I'd like to hear more from her about all of this. None taken. And I could tell her that you want to meet. She won't bring you in without some kind of compensation though, just so you know, Naya. He nodded, mentally wondering if this Ophis could be able to send him back home. Well, I don't mind you watching me and dropping in from time to time. It's nice having another friend to talk to. Friend? She asked as she tilted her head. You consider me a friend? Well, a potential one anyway. We have a bit in common and I'd like to swap more stories with you. This world's interesting and I'd like to learn more about it. She smiled at his words and nodded. Sure thing, Naya. I'll be sure to stop by every now and then. For now though, I'll go talk to Ophis-sama. She then boldly kissed his whiskered cheek, making him flush brightly while she grinned. See you around, Naruto-kun. With that, she left Naruto alone on the rooftop rubbing his cheek with his blush still in place. Man! What a woman! You said it, kid! Agreed Kurama with a fanged grin. Rias laid back on her bed, completely bare for anyone to see if they entered her room. Her head rested over her hands as she looked up at the ceiling. Her thoughts revolved around the whiskered blonde who had agreed to help her and who had shown her what assumptions could lead to. She smiled at how much he had already done to help her peerage prepare, and it had only been one afternoon of training. Rias wasn't going to know what hit him when the game started. But a part of her wondered what would happen after the game ended. Would Naruto leave? Would her brother succeed in being able to send him back to his home world? Such thoughts made her frown. She had been begging for some kind of hero to help her, and when one comes he could leave just as easily as he arrived. She wanted to get to know him more, to deepen the friendship that he had offered her. And not only that, but a part of her wanted to bond with him on a deeper level than friendship. He was like her in many ways, and she felt some kind of kinship in the blonde ninja. She blushed as she realized that she was already attracted to Naruto Uzumaki, but it was hard not to be. He was just so charming in his own way, and he was so confident in anything he set his mind to. She couldn't help but want to be beside him through his newest strides. Giggling softly to herself, she slowly fell asleep and began to dream of the blonde hero. Akeno hugged a pillow as she smiled and laid on her own bed. Unknowingly like her, king, the queen of Rias's peerage was thinking about the Uzumaki. She giggled as she remembered how he had comforted her and made her remember the good times she had with her mother. Her smile softened as she recalled the feeling of warmth when she focused on the love she had for her mother instead of the anger against her father. In the span of just one afternoon, this strange and kind man had done more for her than anyone except the Gremory house and Rias. She hugged her pillow tighter and smiled brighter at the smile he always seemed to have. It eased her and made her feel like she could do anything she set her mind to. Closing her eyes, she snuggled into the pillow, imagining herself in his arms once again and blushing in her sleep. Naruto-kun, she whispered as she slept. 2 weeks had come and gone, and Naruto spent each day making sure Rias and her peerage were ready for anything. He trained them into the ground in such a way that Gari and Lee would have been proud to join in. He had them work on team tactics, helped them hone their individual talents, and even helped Rias learn how to think on the fly. The last couple of days were spent in mock battles with his clones acting as enemy pieces, and the devils showed just how much they had learned from him. He couldn't help but grin at their progress. He may not have been much of a teacher, in his own opinion, but he liked to think that he had prepared them enough for the rating game. One thing he had noticed though was how much Rias and Akeno seemed to try in getting his attention. He would spend time with them of course, but it was new to him to be so sought out by two beautiful women. Not only that, but Kuroka, whenever she visited, had taken to laying in his lap in both her cat form and her natural form. As a cat, she enjoyed the way his fingers brushed through her fur and found the sweet spots on her back and behind her ears. However, while she was in her natural form, she loved how his chakra would warm her body and send pleasant tingles through her. He blushed as he remembered how the Nekomata woman would always leave him flustered with a kiss on the cheek every time she left. Though, he couldn't help but think he saw something in her eyes when she had left him last night. "Naruto-kun?" asked Rias. "You okay?" "Ooh?" he asked back, being broken from his thoughts. "Oh, yeah, I'm okay. So, are we ready to start?" "Almost. Nisama is getting ready to have Grafia start the game. You have your party favors, right?" He grinned at her as he patted a scroll that was tied to his belt. "I wouldn't leave without them, Red-chan." She blushed at the name, having come to enjoy it since it felt personal to her. Akeno pouted a little at her friend's blush before she stepped up to the blonde. "Any words of encouragement for us, Naruto-kun?" she asked as she stood close to him. "Nothing much other than to watch your back and don't do anything reckless." He then grinned and thumbed his chest as he added, "That's my job." Akeno giggled at his last comment and smiled at the blonde warmly, making Rias's brow twitch. The two then locked eyes and Akeno smirked at her while an unseen spark locked between their eyes. Silently, they both agreed to one thing: they weren't backing off so easily. "All peerage members get ready. The rating game between Riza Phoenix-sama and Rias Gremory-sama is about to begin," announced Grafia from a microphone. "That's our cue," Rias said, breaking her gaze from Akeno to address her friends. "This is it, everyone. No matter what happens, I can't thank you enough for standing with me for this." They all smiled and nodded to her while Naruto grinned with a thumbs up. She smiled back at them as they were all blinded by a brilliant flash of light. When it died down, they found themselves in the familiar sight of the occult research club room. The lone human of the group, having absorbed the temporary peace before the game started, grinned as he looked outside and saw the detail in the battlefield he would be fighting in with these devils. "Let the games begin!" he exclaimed before he grabbed his scroll and opened it, covering him and the others in a plume of smoke. "All right, let's see here," muttered Naruto as the contents of his now empty scroll rested on the desk Rias sat at. The others looked at what he had and were a bit confused at the contents revealed. There was a stack of paper tags, all of them with a strange archaic symbol on them. The devils all watched as he separated the tags into different groups before he smiled and nodded to himself. "Okay, I think we're good," he declared before he pocketed 4 of the tags, leaving 6 remaining. "The rest are for you all. Each of you takes one and keeps it in case of an emergency." Taking one, Aisha asked, "But how do these tags work, Naruto-san?" "You put your devil power into it and make sure that the symbol is facing your opponent. Inside each one is a technique of mine that will be launched from the tag. Be careful though, since the backlash of the technique can push you back pretty badly." The others nodded before Rias brought their attention to a small map. "All right, we're in our clubroom while Riza is in the main school building. Between us and them is the gymnasium, and that also acts as the border between our respective sides. So, most of the fighting will be in there since he has 8 pawns," deduced Naruto. "The forests surrounding the school grounds are also fair game by the looks of it." "Bucho, I'll lead Issei-kun and Koneko-chan to the gym to take care of the pawns," suggested Kiba. "No, it's too many of our own members," immediately shot down the red-headed king. "Issei will go with you, Kiba, while Koneko goes around. Akeno will go the other way while Naruto and I head for Riza." "And me, Bucho?" asked Aisha nervously. "If I may add some input?" asked Naruto, earning him a nod from Rias to continue. "I suggest that Aisha goes with Koneko. With her as a rook, she can take more punishment than others. But it's only so much more. Aisha-chan can help make it so that she can keep going and provide magical support." "I agree," supported Koneko with a small nod. Need to be kept in top form so I can keep fighting. Rias thought it over before she slowly nodded. Alright, but Aisha needs to be sure to stay out of immediate danger. If we get in trouble, she's important for helping us recover. The others nodded before they all set out, ready to take on Rias Phoenix and his peerage. Kuroka sat in a beanbag chair in front of a large television that was set to the station broadcasting the rating game between Rias and Riza. She smirked as she watched the footage of Naruto planning with the Gremory girl's peerage, eager to see what he would bring to the game. Kuroka, is there a point to having me watch this with you? Asked Ophis as she stood behind the Nekomata woman. As far as I can tell from watching, this is just another rating game between devils that has your sister in it. But Boss Tilda whined Kuroka childishly before pointing to the screen. That blonde man in black and orange was the one you had me look for. He's the one I told you was named Naruto Uzumaki. The short dragon goddess raised a brow slightly before looking back at the screen, taking a closer look at the blonde man named Naruto. Her brows furrowed so faintly that one would be hard-pressed to notice, but her focus was on the human. What she was mainly focused on though were his eyes whenever the camera had them on screen, and what she saw impressed her. Within those eyes were experience, wisdom, and a drive to accomplish anything the owner set their mind to. For a human to have that much in his gaze, and to appear so young-looking, was nothing short of impressive and commendable. Unconsciously though, her right hand reached up towards her chest area, and a blue amulet materialized from nothingness just in time for her fingers to wrap around it. Her hand kept a hold on the amulet as she watched the broadcast, and her gaze became more intent as she observed the Uzumaki. Issei and Kiba were having a bit of trouble in the gymnasium due to the unneeded arrival of all of Riza's pawns. Issei took on 2 pairs of twins, while Kiba took on the remainder of the group. The first pair of twins were brunette girls that wielded chainsaws as their main weapons. Issei's dragon gauntlet was sturdy enough to hold back the sharp blades and parry them, but the next pair of twins kept him from pressing forward to attack. They were a pair of Nico girls that specialized in hand-to-hand. The only way to tell them apart was by their hair color, red and blue. He again parried the chainsaw twins' attack before he rolled away from an axe kick by the red-headed Nico. Damn it, he mentally cursed while activating his boost. They're too in sync with each other. Perhaps it'd be best to use that Uzumaki guy's seal tag now, suggested the voice that came with his sacred gear. He did say to use it in emergencies. Yeah, but it's a one-time deal, and these are just pawns, shot down the pawn, as he noticed Kiba spin right into the guard of all 4 of his opponents. The blonde knight then struck with twin sword strikes, taking down the female pawns before they had a chance to act. For a Phoenix Sama's pawns have been eliminated, spoke Grafia through the broadcasting speakers while said eliminated pieces faded out of the battlefield. Kiba gave Issei a supportive nod before he rushed out to look for more of the enemy pieces. Damn, he may be a pretty boy, but I'm glad Kiba's on my team, noted the brunette before he cartwheeled away from another twin strike from the Nico girls. Okay, time to get serious. He growled out before crying, boost. With his already doubled power doubling once more, he ducked beneath a chainsaw swipe and landed a sharp body blow to the girl who made the swing. The impact made her cough out the wind in her lungs and lose her grip on her weapon. Issei then rose, spun, and struck the girl's head with a fierce backhanded strike that made her drop to the ground, unmoving. Nell! Cried Isle, the other chainsaw twin, as she saw her sister get eliminated and removed from play. Bastard! She then screamed as she rushed the dragon-armed teen. Issei gave her a fierce look and then aimed his weaponized left arm at her, remembering something Naruto told him. Issei, everyone has a dormant power within them that will come when its wielder is ready. It isn't just your sacred gear that makes you strong. A dormant power, mused the brunette as he focused harder than he had ever done before, summoning forth a notable level of devil power. The energy built up in his arm and the name came to him as he fired, Dragon Shot. The energy shot forward as a massive blast with the tip taking on the form of a dragon's head. It roared at Isle as she watched it in shock before it engulfed her and exploded in a fierce burst. Phoenix Sama's 6th pawn has been eliminated. The twin Nico looked at the scorched ground where Isle once stood before looking back to Issei, who was rolling his shoulder with a slight grimace. NNGH. Definitely not used to that much power, he muttered. NI, began the redhead. Yes, Lee? Asked the brunette. We need to hurry up and take him down before he promotes himself. Her twin nodded and the duo dropped to all 4s and their eyes became more feline. Baring their fangs and new claws, they shot at Issei who readied himself for them. Hey kid, began the voice, making Issei perk up. There's another power you could use, but it drains you of the boosted power you have saved up. Will it hurt? Returned the teen as the Nico girls got closer. A bit, but you'll get used to it. You might want to use it now, finished the voice as it imparted the knowledge of the power to its host. Issei groaned at the sudden wave of new knowledge before he shot his eyes open and raised his arm skyward. Boosted gear, explosion! He roared as the jewel on his gauntlet shined brightly and unleashed a massive burst of power. The Nico girls were caught completely off guard by the sudden burst and were shot back as twin balls of fire, crashing into the gym wall across from Issei, who was on a bended knee and clutching left shoulder in pain. He was too focused on it to hear Grafia proclaim that Rias's final 2 pawns were eliminated. Damn it, that hurts, mentally roared the brunette. You said it would only hurt a bit. I didn't think you'd be unable to handle the strain, explained the voice. Listen, just go find that nun girl and have her heal you up. And keep your guard up, damn it. You're still on the battlefield. Issei groaned in response, staggering to his feet before he began to search for Aisha. Koneko backed away from a hard strike from a Ravenet girl dressed in Chinese attire. Her amber eyes narrowed at her and the brunette girl with half her face covered in a mask. Aisha stood in a nervous stance behind her, her hands shaking as she kept her eyes on the 2 enemy rooks. She had heard the updates on the pieces eliminated and was relieved that none of her friends had been announced. However, she was now afraid that she or Koneko could be, since it was 2 rooks on 1 and a supportive bishop. This will be easy, declared Xuelan, the Ravenet with a smirk. Isabella didn't say anything, but she had a matching smirk. Koneko-san, whispered Aisha to her friend. What do we do? The Nekomata didn't respond for a moment as the 2 enemy rooks readied to attack. Stay back, she said softly to the blonde ex-nun. I'll handle this. Aisha nodded and took a small step backward just as the 2 rooks leapt at her friend. What worried her though was that Koneko was standing still with no stance or form to counter. I hope you have a plan, mentally prayed the blonde as her hand strayed to her pocket where the seal tag Naruto gave her was. Koneko had her eyes closed as she drowned everything out. She focused on nothing else except for the dormant chakra within her. This was something Naruto had stressed to her in regards to keeping her chakra calm. Focus. Concentrate. The 2 rooks got closer. Reach out. Pull out my power. Her hand slowly rose, gaining a light blue hue as they did so. This is me. I won't lose myself. Her hands clenched and the blue hue became an azure fire that engulfed her fists. I won't back away from this. I won't, she mentally cried as her eyes shot open and she threw a twin palm strike, hitting both of her opponents in their chests. The duo were left frozen from the strike, silent screams coming from their mouths while their eyes were wide from the pain. Koneko pulled her arms back and stepped away, letting the 2 fall to their knees and then to the ground. Their faces never changed expression and they didn't move a muscle, seemingly dead to the world from the strike as they faded away from the board. Phoenix Sama's 2 rooks have been eliminated, stated Grafia, making Koneko stare at her hands contemplatively. She clenched them a few times before nodding to herself and turning to Aisha, who was looking to her in awe. Let's keep going, stated the young Nekomata as she took the lead with the blonde bishop right on her tail, no pun intended. Yaeshironi-chan, Naya Tilda! Cheered Kuroka from her seat as she witnessed her sister use chakra to take down her opponents. Mentally, she added, thank you, Naruto-kun. Impressive for one so young, commented Ophis as she remained standing behind her Nekomata subordinate. I'm curious, though. I was under the impression that your sister was swayed away from the usage of chakra or anything to do with it. The stray cat turned to her boss with a Cheshire grin on her face. She was, but Naruto-kun was able to convince her otherwise. Now, we can try and rebuild that bond we once had, Naya, she said, smiling longingly towards the end as she imagined having her little sister back. A human, one full of chakra, convinced her to embrace the very energy she feared? Queried the dragon goddess with a raised brow. Turning back to the television, she asked in a softer tone, just who is this Naruto Uzumaki? Kuroka smiled as she turned back to the screen as well. He's a hero, boss. Akeno jumped back and pushed off the ground with her hand as she evaded another explosion from Ubaluna. She retaliated with a wave of lightning that was redirected with a magic shield. "Ara, I'm impressed with you, Bomb Queen," commented Akeno as she stood up with her hands on her hips. "You're fighting so fiercely when your master placed your position at risk." Luna frowned at the mention of her master. I'm not fighting for him, Himajima-san. I'm fighting for something else. She then unleashed some more explosions around the hybrid queen. Oh? Questioned Akeno as she flew above the bombs and then dive-bombed her opponent. And what would that be? She yelled over the rushing wind. Luna chose to forego her normal magic and instead sent forth a fireball at Akeno. I'm fighting to prove that I'm not worthless, to prove that he was right to fight for me. Akeno barrel-rolled away from the fireball, staying afloat as she looked down at Luna with a raised brow. He wouldn't happen to be Naruto-kun, wouldn't he? Luna had a dusting of pink on her face before she glared at the hybrid. And if he is? To her surprise, Akeno smiled at her and slowly dropped to the ground and landing gently on her feet. So, he got to you too, huh? She asked, though there was a knowing undertone. What are you getting at? I mean that he made you start to believe in yourself again, didn't he? Luna was surprised at the question, but she slowly nodded. Yes. He did. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. He seems to have this gift for connecting with others, even if they're total strangers. And then, as soon as a connection is made, he shows them the worth that they never knew they had. That's exactly how I felt when he said he would fight for me, admitted Luna. He made me want to prove that he was fighting for someone worthwhile. Akeno nodded as she leaned on the outside wall of the main school building. He did the same for me. He helped me face some old scars, but in a different and more positive way. Now, I want to show him that he wasn't wasting his time, that I was worth his time. Luna smirked and leaned right next to her fellow queen. Sounds to me like you were affected more deeply than I was. Was it the eyes that got you? Akeno giggled behind her hand at the question. I'll admit that it was a definite plus. But for me, I think it was those wild locks of his. They're like the sun, warm and bright, and so, him. Luna giggled as well, and the two queens soon disregarded the fact that a game was still going on as they talked about the Uzumaki that had made them believe in themselves again. Look, I don't want any trouble, Issei said as he regarded a blonde girl dressed in a high society dress. I just want to get to my king and help her face rise a team. Ravel Phoenix puffed her cheeks at both the insult to her brother, though she agreed with it, and at being brushed off so easily. Now see here, I will not be disregarded as some pawn by another pawn. You will face me as the game intends us to. Issei sweat dropped at her mightier-than-thou attitude before he sighed and readied his boosted gear. Fine then. Don't say it as if it's some heavy burden to you, yelled the Phoenix with an embarrassed blush on her face. You should be honored to face a Phoenix in AHH. She was cut off by a dive kick from Issei that made her shriek in surprise as she dodged. Issei kept up his attack as soon as he landed, using his boost as he neared the girl who looked too shocked to move. She was so surprised that a mere pawn almost got to her that she didn't know what to do. Closing her eyes, she braced herself for the hit. But no such hit came. Instead, she felt an armored hand pat her head and she opened her eyes to see Issei looking at her apologetically. Sorry if I frightened you. I honestly can't bring myself to fight someone who can't fight back. Look, if you just wait here and promise not to try and fight me and my friends, I promise not to let anyone know where you're at. Deal? Ravel looked down at the offered, though unarmored, hand from the brunette. Why would you offer such a thing? We enemies, aren't we? We don't have to be, suggested Issei as he took the initiative and grabbed her hand, shaking it a couple of times. I'm Issei Hyudu, a pawn for Rias. It's nice to meet you. She was baffled by the sudden introduction, but she couldn't help the smile at the sincerity from the human-turned-devil before her. So, performing a noble curtsy, she greeted back, My name is Ravel Phoenix, daughter of Lord and Lady Phoenix. A pleasure to meet you as well, Hyudu-san. Issei smiled at her before he turned and left to find Rias, leaving Ravel smiling after him. Unknown to them, they had been observed by Koneko, who was impressed at the maturity by the pervert. Deciding to support him, for once, she left without attacking Ravel. Rias smirked as he stared down his fiancée and the human that had challenged him. Well, it looks like I'm able to kill two birds with one stone. Careful, replied Naruto with a teasing smirk, you could accidentally kill yourself with that stone, bird boy. Rias' brow twitched at the insult. Your pain will be delivered slowly. I'm going to enjoy watching you slowly roast to a crisp, to watch the agony in your eyes as you agh. He was cut off by a small stone striking his forehead. Oi, there's your stone to kill birds with. called out Naruto while Rias struggled not to laugh at the look on Rise's face. You, growled out the Phoenix while Naruto grinned at him. Yes, me. The guy who's gonna kick your ass and make you drop this engagement to Red-chan and get your queen away from your prideful ass. Rise's devil power began to rise, increasing the temperature in the area. I'm going to enjoy watching you crash and burn. He roared as he unleashed a massive wave of fire. Naruto stared down the approaching inferno and calmly said, Rias. She turned to him and replied, yes? That tag I gave you, activate it. She was surprised at how soon she was using her tag, but she complied and pointed the seal at the fire. Pouring her devil power into it, she was surprised to see a sphere surrounded by fierce wind blades shoot out of it and streak towards the flames, though she stumbled back from the backlash Naruto had warned her about. Naruto watched with a proud look as his unsealed Raisin Shuriken met the wave of fire and engulfed it in a massive explosion. When the burst died down, Riser was left staring in shock at Naruto through the floating embers between them. Well, I really hope that fire of yours wasn't your best shot? Or does most of your fire go to reforming that massive stick up your ass every time you heal yourself? Riser saw red at that and roared furiously as his flaming devil wings burst from his back and propelled him toward the Uzumaki. He was too enraged to see Naruto reach behind him and ready another tag, or see Rias ready a destruction orb. All he was focused on was that damnable grin on the blonde's face, one that poked at his pride and got under his skin so easily. So, he was ill-prepared for Naruto to duck and palm strike his chest, sticking a seal tag there as he did so. The Uzumaki then spun and ducked beneath his left wing, slapping a second seal tag on his underarm. He kept his spin around Riser and placed the last two tags on his neck and right underarm respectively before he leapt back just in time for Rias to fire her destruction orb at Riser's face. The Phoenix stumbled back from the blow to his face while his power healed any damage that had been done. After shaking himself from the daze, he looked at the tags on his body before scoffing. Is that it, paper tags? You think paper can stop my fire? He asked challengingly. Naruto never lost his grin as he answered, I wouldn't if those tags were normal paper. He then held up a half-ram seal, causing the seals to glow a bright orange. But then again, not many people can understand my strategies, even the people from my world. Gravity seal, activate! It happened in an instant. The seals glowed brighter and Riser felt his body grow exponentially heavier, bringing him down to his hands and knees with his head lowered. His eyes were wide in shock as he realized the position he was forced to take, one of a man of lower stature bowing to others higher than himself. He was forced to bow to Naruto Uzumaki and Rias Gremory. How dare you force me into this position? He snarled, calling on his fire once more. Release me, now. Yeah, I don't think I'll do that. You see, I was told that you never really lost a match unless you gave up. And even then, you only did it for a favor in return. So, you've never experienced a total loss before. Of course not. I am Riser Phoenix. I don't lose to these pathetic devils unless I wish it. Well then, began Naruto as he crouched down and grinned in an ironically devilish manner at Riser's bowed form, let me be the first to make you give up. Let's let the devils watching witness a human make a noble devil submit. Rias looked floored at the sight, not once thinking that the Uzumaki would try something so publicly bold. Seeing her fiancé in such a position made her slowly grin, and knowing it was Naruto made her feel a little hot. You have less sense than I first thought if you think I'm going to submit to a worthless human, growled out Riser as he struggled to move, but was unsuccessful. You know, you really seem to think that we humans are beneath everyone else, noted Naruto as he took a seat in front of Riser with his legs crossed. Yet, you fail to see just how much we've accomplished. Like I care, retorted the devil. You should. Your home is so much like that of the human world, in case you didn't notice. Also, you devils seem to act on your feelings and desires when we humans can think more rationally. He then stood up and began to slowly circle the bowing blonde. Now, I'm not saying that we're better than devils. You all have something worthwhile about you too, just as I'm sure that the fallen and the angels have something that makes them special. Is there a point to this, or are you going to try and talk me to death? Riser, just shut up and listen to him. Rias snapped, surprising the Phoenix. Can't you see that he's trying to extend a hand of friendship? He has every right to be furious with you for everything you've said about his home and his people. Naruto smiled at the redhead and gave her a grateful nod as he continued, there is no superior race, Riser. Everyone has their good qualities, just as everyone has their faults. I'll admit that I'm not perfect and I never will be. Ophis's entire focus was on the blonde human being broadcasted, listening to the words he spoke and comparing them to the words that he once said. He knew nobody was perfect, and he made sure to let the world know that it was okay to have faults. This Naruto reminded her so much of him that she could dare to say that he was reincarnated. Ironic, since it would be the reverse of the norm, since he was once a devil unlike any before. Her hand once again gripped the blue amulet while the other rested over her heart. Sparda! She mentally whispered as a lone tear fell. But I know that, despite my faults, I'm proud of who I am and where I come from, just as you are proud of who you are, finished Naruto as the rest of Rias' peerage, along with Luna and Ravel, approached the rooftop of the main school building. Surprisingly, the two queens were walking together and talking as if they were old friends, while Ravel had chosen to stand a bit closer to Issei. Ravel, Luna, take down this worthless pest and free me, ordered Rias to his bishop and queen. Both women regarded their king before Luna stepped forward slowly, making the male phoenix smirk at her obedience. As he pictured his comeback, he failed to notice Luna looking at Naruto's face while said blonde gave her a kind smile. She returned the smile as she reached her king, standing next to the Jinchuriki. Rias, she began, making him lose his smirk at the lacking suffix, you can take that order and shove it. Following this declaration was an explosion from right under the phoenix, making him cry out in surprise and pain. As the smoke cleared, he was already almost finished healing and he glared at Luna in fury. You traitorous whore! He roared, making Naruto frown. I'll see that you burn for this. So much that no one in the netherworld, on Earth, or even in heaven can recognize you. Naruto sighed and shook his head at the threat. You really are a prideful fool, Rias Phoenix, he stated before turning to his friends. Everyone, point your tags at him. One at a time, activate them, and wait until he fully heals before firing off another one. The others nodded and pulled out their seal tags, Akeno activating hers first. Like Rias's beforehand, the seal unleashed a raisin shuriken at Rias and engulfed him in a huge burst of wind blades as he screamed in agony. One by one, the rest of the Gremory peerage activated their seals and struck Rias, making him experience the sheer torture of millions upon millions of wind blades shredding both his outside and inside. After the final one was released by a slightly reluctant Aisha, Naruto strode forward and stopped in front of the bowed and gasping Rias. Right now, you've died at least 5 times and not once have you been able to do a thing about it. Damn you, panted out the phoenix as he glared at the Uzumaki in pure hatred. I didn't want to do this, really, I didn't. But I guess I won't be able to make you give up unless you're faced with real terror. He waved back the others, making them distance themselves before he took on his chakra mode. It then shifted into a similar form, but gained a large coat and newer markings, his ascended mode. Pay attention, Rias, he began, staring down the devil with his orange-slitted eyes. I want you to see what exactly you've been up against this whole time. Rias stared on in shock as the human before him became engulfed in golden flames that grew exponentially. The flames then took shape and gained black markings similar to the ones he had before, presenting itself in the form of a massive golden fox with 9 tails. Many devils in the stands, along with Kuroka and Ophis at the Chaos Brigade base, watched in awe as the golden Kyuubi roared down at Rias, sending forth a shockwave from the sheer power of it. Rias himself was left unable to move, staying bowed before the massive fox. Standing in front of you is the result of a symbiotic relationship between myself and the Biju sealed within me. Together, we have accepted our faults and our achievements and we work as a team, spoke Naruto, but there was a second and more animalistic voice that accompanied his. Now, see just what we're capable of. The fox then opened its massive jaws and everyone saw a small orb slowly take shape, twisting and shifting as the dense energies it held slowly merged and took on a stable form. The form itself was a sphere that was pitch black, but the core glowed like the setting sun while the power behind it made the air feel heavy. Rias and her friends were awed by the power that Naruto had at his disposal. Even though Rias had read and seen pictures of this form in her manga, seeing it in real life was something else entirely. Naruto! You're incredible! Tailed beast bomb! Roared the partner Jinchuriki and Bu as the ethereal fox swallowed the sphere and then unleashed it as a massive blast of pure chakra. It was upon Rias in an instant, engulfing him in the blast and drowning out his screams while destroying the entire school grounds from the shockwave. It also overloaded the seals and destroyed them, which allowed Rias to be kicked up off his hands and knees and shot backward into the barrier of the board. Ever so slowly, the smoke and dust cleared up just enough for everyone to see Naruto in his natural form standing before a downed riser. The phoenix coughed and groaned as his body screamed in pain. The sheer power and density of the attack was too much for his healing factor to deal with, and it showed from the burn markings that failed to heal. Naruto looked down at his opponent sadly, not liking how far he had to go even though he felt it was necessary. "Riser," he muttered as the phoenix kept trying to get back on his feet. Sighing softly, he stepped forward and pushed the devil onto his back with his foot, holding him down with the flat of his sandal and having a fully powered Rasengan at the ready in his palm. He had the jutsu pointed at Riser's face as he finished. "This is checkmate. Riser Phoenix-sama has been defeated. The rating game is now finished and the winner is the peerage of Rias Gremory-sama," declared Grafia, prompting the spectating devils to erupt in a massive outburst of cheers and applause for the performance. Not once did they believe that they'd see something so spectacular as the game they had just witnessed. The area that made up the board faded away and Naruto let his jutsu fade before he stepped back to allow Riser's peerage, save for Ravel and Luna, to rush over to their king and make sure he was all right. Turning away from the sight, he was forced to brace himself as Rias surprised him with a jumping hug that nearly knocked him over. Not long after her was Akeno, who tried to wrap her legs around him as well. "We won!" cheered Rias in elation. "You did it, Naruto!" Sheepishly, the blonde chuckled and rubbed his head in embarrassment before he was left wide-eyed as he felt a pair of soft lips on his own. Looking down, he saw that it was Rias who was kissing him and he was left frozen in shock. "Hey Red!" hissed out Kuroka jealously, baring her fangs at the scene on the television. "Keep your lips off of my Naruto-kun's lips, Naya." Ophis rolled her eyes at the envious Nekomata as she watched the broadcast. A small smirk formed on her face as she nodded and then left the room. "Well played, Naruto Uzumaki," she calmly praised as she walked off, already making plans to meet and speak with the intriguing human. She also completely ignored an angry Kuroka leaving via magic portal. "Well, regretfully I have no choice but to have my son honor the ramifications of his wager with both Rias and Uzumaki-san," stated Lord Phoenix as he, his wife, and the Lord and Lady of the Gremory House stood before both peerages. "The contract between our houses is now null and void, and my son's queen will be released from her service to him." He regarded Naruto and added, "She will be placed into your care for the time being, Uzumaki-san." Naruto mentally frowned since it felt like Luna was being passed around like some pet getting a new owner. But he didn't comment on it and just nodded to Lord Phoenix. "Now, if there's nothing else, we'll be taking our leave now. Rias, congratulations on your win. It seems your luck was quite high when you stumbled upon Uzumaki-san." Rias held back her frown at the subtle jab at her peerage while the Phoenix family and Riser's peerage left. She shook off the annoyance and turned to her friends with a bright smile. "Everyone, thank you so much for fighting so hard for me. We'll keep training, though. I know we can get stronger, and I want to see us make history as a peerage that will never be forgotten." "Ara," began Akeno with a small giggle, "I doubt anyone will forget our performance, Bucho." "Yes, I believe we gave them quite a performance," Kiba added with a kind smile to his king. "Very well done," added Koneko with her normally stoic look, though she did throw in a small thumbs up. "We were awesome," cheered Issei with a fist pump while Aisha giggled at his antics. "We'll keep showing those other devils that we're not to be messed with." Naruto smiled at the camaraderie between the young devils, being reminded of his friends from back home. "Well, you are now free to choose your own partner, Red-chan," he stated as he looked to the young woman. "The rest is up to you, now." "I know," she said with a smile. It grew lightly as she blushed and asked, "Maybe we can go out together sometime? We could get some ramen?" He blinked in surprise at the question. "Are you asking me out?" "I believe I am," she answered. "And you've yet to give me an answer." His cheeks warmed as the others looked to him, though Akeno was hiding her jealousy with a smile and Luna's fingers twitched in anticipation. "Well, I guess a date wouldn't be a problem." Rias's smile brightened at his acceptance. "Great! We'll go out tomorrow since we need some rest tonight from the game." She then activated her family portal and transported her friends to the mountain manor, thought there was someone already waiting for them. And this person was familiar to two people. "Kurokurine-sama?" asked Naruto and Koneko in surprise. "So Kakashi, I appreciate you volunteering to have a transplanted Jutsu once more," stated Tsunade as she looked to the silverette Jonin who once again wore his headband over his left eye. Well, I've lived with one for so long that going back to having two was somewhat unnatural to me. So, I figured it'd be easier to have one again, replied the man with his ever-famous eye-smile. Tsunade smiled at his reasons and was about to speak again, but she was interrupted by a sudden pressure in the air. Turning to the window, she frowned as a strange rip appeared in the skies above the village. Bigger and wider it opened as the pressure grew denser and heavier. From the space within the rip, witnessed by dozens of shinobi and civilians alike, a fierce-looking amber eye with a black slit pupil appeared. It was followed by another, and then there was the sight of sharp and sturdy scales before a massive dragon head stared down at the hidden leaf village. An exhale from the beast's head brought forth smoke before the massive dragon roared to the skies, and the air grew hotter and arid. Tsunade's eyes widened and she screamed to her people, "Everyone take cover!" The next thing the village knew was fire. As soon as he saw Kuroka's expression, Naruto knew there was trouble. It was a little too similar to what Sakura or Aino had toward one another when the topic of discussion was Sasuke. "Hello Red, Naya." The Nico snarled, her feline ears flattened and slicked back, pressing against her head as her gaze was fixed on the Gremory heiress. Naruto looked alarmed at how much chakra he sensed Kuroka was channeling in preparation of launching what was bound to be a nasty attack. This was bad. But before he could do anything, someone else beat him to it and moved first. Koneko dashed between her friends and her sister, slamming her fist into the ground and causing it to shake and crack. Naruto was surprised that Koneko's chakra was actually visible through the cracks as heavy chunks of earth began to jut up widely in height, fraying together and warping the area until a 90-yard circumference around them had been turned into a craggy, hard-to-navigate mess. Kuroka had to drop gathering her chakra and preparing her technique in order to hop around, bending and contorting her alluring in ways that made her grateful she was gifted with the nimbleness of her feline species. On a side note, she did notice that Issei, perverted boy that he was, had a nosebleed as he watched her move. If she didn't keep herself on edge, she could have gotten her leg broken, or worse. As the tremor came to an end, Kuroka sought refuge on an upright spire and she then looked at the alterations to the landscape approvingly. Impressive. You used chakra to concentrate and guide the way while the kinetic force of your blow changed things, the black cat said, beaming at the white-haired girl with a furiously triumphant pride. I'm a rook, strength's my forte, and I'm not running from using my chakra anymore. I owe Naruto for that, Koneko said before she turned to look at the blonde in question. What I want to know, however, is how he knows your name. I know he was aware of who you are since he mentioned you when he helped me figure out my chakra control, but he never mentioned that he knew you personally. Naruto winced. Koneko's bland tone making it hard to know if it was accusatory or not. Kuroka shrugged, chakra levels like his? They're impossible to miss. And besides, he and I are both senjutsu practitioners. I was interested in seeing what was up, Naya. You know what they say about curiosity and cats after all, Imuto-chan, she quipped. What do you want? Koneko said, turning back to her sibling. The black cat sighed at how blunt her Imuto was being. Well, for starters, I saw the rating game, she said simply, then shot Rias a look of irritation. Naruto gulped and Rias went red in the face. Of course, they had heard what the Catwoman hadn't said, loud and clear. She saw the rating game, and how Rias had kissed Naruto and asked him out after winning it. So that's what this visit is about. Rias deduced, then frowned at Naruto. Naruto. Care to explain why she is jealous? She asked warningly. Naruto paled and started to sweat. How could he safely explain this? Oh, lay off. I told you that I was interested in finding out about a senjutsu user with such vast levels of chakra, didn't I? And because of it, I got to go keep an eye on my sister too, Naya. Trouble is, senjutsu allows one to detect the life force of others around them, so he noticed me. Of course, I wasn't going to fight him. I've seen just how strong he is, and more importantly anyway, he was helping look after my little sister. So why would I give him a reason to call me an enemy, Naya? The SS-class stray said, coming to the Leaf Shinobi's defense. Rias's peerage all looked at Naruto, who was mentally cursing the black cat. You kept something like that from us. Kiba said, narrowing his eyes. Crap, mentally swore the Uzumaki while Kurama chuckled. If you must know, my boss Ophis, the dragon goddess of infinity, wanted me to track him down. You gotta admit that he's got serious power inside him that's impossible to overlook. Not to mention that the whole of the netherworld will acknowledge it, especially after the beating he gave the Phoenix. Besides, on a more personal level, the Nekomata species is currently on the brink of extinction. Excuse me if I don't want my kind dying out, Naya. Kuroka snapped. Naruto blushed and choked on his own saliva at that, eyes wide and looking at the Nico in shock. As much he needed a way to explain how he knew Kuroka, that wasn't it. The spikes of sheer feminine outrage he felt zero in on him confirmed that. Koneko sighed and rolled her eyes. Still love teasing everyone and everything you can and making trouble, sis. I thought that the older sibling was supposed to be the mature one. Stop trying to get him in trouble. If you saw the rating game, you could have found out about him from that. No way would he let someone with your reputation anywhere near the ones he trusts. Kuroka huffed with a cute pout. You're no fun right now, Imuto. Naruto sighed, relieved, as he felt the sense of death vanish. Damn. Rias, Akeno, and Yuba Luna have some seriously nasty killer intent. Thank you, Koneko. Your ironically devil's luck continues to pay off, it seems, Kurama joked. So you know her, but you're aware she's a criminal? Akeno asked. I heard what she did, but there was something that didn't add up. When I achieved the QB chakra mode during my training, I gained the ability to sense negative emotions, such as hatred and killing intent, of any individual around me. There wasn't anything like that surrounding her, and I've been around the presence of power-drunk psychotics. Her life energy lacked that feeling, and it made me wonder if there was a part missing from the story about her, explained Naruto before he turned back to Kuroka. Look, can we talk about this privately? Kuroka smirked and held up her hands, forming a barrier that cut off her, Rias, Naruto, and Koneko from the others. There we are. This barrier ought to do the trick. No food or water can get in, and we can't get out. Best of all, it can only be taken down by its caster, so since killing is out of the question because of that, we'll have no choice but to talk, Naya. She said, pleased. Rias narrowed her eyes. Talk? What's there to talk about? She asked heatedly, making the older devil sigh. Figures. Guess it's true, you can tell people the truth, but unless you tell them what they want to hear, you're a liar either way, Kuroka said bitterly. The sad fact is that everyone's like that, but if the full story is more complicated, it wouldn't hurt to hear it. Besides, don't you feel like you owe Koneko the truth about what happened when you left her? Naruto said. At that, Kuroka winced like she'd been stabbed. Damn you, Naruto-kun, she cursed softly, making him blush at the affectionate title for him. That last remark was uncalled for, Naya. Telling her the full story was already my intention. Then what is the full story, then? If there really was a good reason why you left, then tell me already. Koneko shouted, her body shaking. The black cat looked at her sibling and sighed. All right, Shironi-chan. For you. But if it's seen as nothing but fictional justification, this'll turn into a fight. You know that, right? She asked in warning, though she looked afraid of that possibility. I just need you to understand that before I do. Koneko nodded at that. Meanwhile, Naruto walked up to Kuroka and put a comforting hand on her shoulder from behind, feeling she'd need some support through this and was glad to give it to her. Feeling a bit more confident, Kuroka sighed and looked up with a distant look in her eyes that showed she was clearly lost in happier times. If you want the whole story, it started after our parents' deaths. Shironi-chan and I ran into a devil and were accepted into their peerage. I myself was worth 2 bishop pieces, and being a Nekomata, I was, and still am, pretty powerful. In fact, I grew stronger than my peerage, king. She paused and Naruto offered a comforting squeeze of his hand, making her smile at him while Rias huffed jealously. Well, as you can imagine, my old boss didn't like that very much. People fear those stronger than them. So in his paranoia, the bastard came up with a scheme to leech my Imuto's life force from her to add her power to his. By doing so, at least in his mind, he'd gained the ability to use senjutsu and Ujutsu himself, thus making him stronger than me. 1. Naruto scowled at that. And let me guess, he was stupid enough to try it? The elder Nekomata nodded. Oh yeah, he was definitely stupid enough, Naya. He told me right to my face what he planned to do and thought I'd just go along with helping him, and that he was untouchable because of the laws against stray devils. The bastard thought I'd care about that more than the last family I had left. I can see where this is going. Let me guess, you literally taught him he was dead wrong's emphasis on the dead part. Am I right? Kuroka hissed and her ears pressed back against her head the way normal cats did when they were upset. Bingo! My sister means everything to me. So when I heard his boasts, I corrected my old boss on my priorities and committed regicide. But? Rias began, only for the cat to cut her off, knowing what she was going to ask. The survivors of my former peerage twisted the story around out of fear. They changed it up so that I was seen as a power-drunk murderess. I was then forced to run. Why? Koneko asked suddenly, looking down, her bangs hiding her eyes, but her body was trembling. Why did you leave me, Nei-sama? You could have at least told me all this before you left. At that, the black cat's mood instantly shattered. She started trembling all over and she hugged herself. You think I wanted to leave my sister? I knew the devils would be after me, that they would only focus on what I did, but not bother finding out why. Besides, I didn't want you to have to endure the life of a stray devil because of my choices. Naruto and Rias noted that her voice cracking, and the blonde saw the beginning of tears in the corners of her eyes. You had no other right choice. I can't say you made the wrong choice, either, the Uzumaki said. You had something you cared about put at risk, and the only way to protect it was to do something unforgivable and horrible. Still, it would have been worse if you hadn't crossed that line. Circumstances and situation have a way of forcing a person's hand, bringing out that kind of what would you do scenario. You made your choice and gave your answer. I respect that. He meant that too. By the kami, Kuroko was way too similar to Itachi in terms of self-sacrifice. But considering what he was like, that was honestly a compliment to her. Rias caught his eye and nodded so minutely, he doubted the sisters had caught it. A bad taste entered her mouth as she shared his thoughts. If those books, the Hurricane Chronicles, really were nearly identical to his life, then she'd know the truth behind Itachi and the Uchiha clan massacre as well as he or Sasuke did. Sasuke-sama. He knew about it, continued Kuroko. After I heard what the devils were going to do. She stopped and seemed to choke on a sob. She began turning so pale that, between her black hair, golden eyes, and how white she was getting, she could have been mistaken as Orochimaru's newest vessel. Following the incident and the failed manhunt that came after, I was sentenced to death by the devils in hopes of preventing another incident like Kuroko's from happening, Koneko finished, gripping her arms with a tremble. They what? The Uzumaki hissed, wide-eyed. Kuroko gulped and nodded. When I heard that, I turned to Sasuke for help. He did attack me first, seeing as I was branded a criminal, but as soon as I mentioned wanting to keep my sister safe, he stopped and listened. He may have the title of Lucifer, but he's still a Gremary, so he's family-oriented to the very core, first and foremost, just like every last one of them. The Chaos Brigade member stopped and nodded respectfully to Rias, regaining her composure as she did before continuing. I begged him to help her. Thankfully, he felt punishing her for what she didn't do like that was immoral. After he stopped the execution, he took Shironi-chan in. The devils accepted that, thinking that if Miyamoto really did lose control, as if she ever would, then he'd stop her. He entrusted my sister to his, and well, here we are. Naruto tensed, his expression going dark, giving him a somewhat oppressive appearance. Added onto that, his appearance started to flicker somewhat. Red chakra came off him in small bursts of flame, and when they did, he gained claws on both his hands and feet. His lips blackened and his canines also lengthened and sharpened until they had turned into fangs, while the pencil-thin whisker markings on his face grew more pronounced. They were widening and darkening, until they resembled abysmal scars. His eyes had been the greatest change, as not only had his eye shape become more vulpine and had gained black eye rings around them like an animal, his once soulful blue eyes themselves had changed, becoming blood red with an animalistic with vertical black slits for the pupils. That's it? Wanting to protect your family? That's why you're seen as a criminal? He whispered softly in a dangerous tone. The three females tensed. Naruto's energy had turned harsher, too harsh. Great, he's so mad that his control of Kurama's chakras regressed to before the training he went through with Killer Bee. Not that I blame him for it, but this is bad. Rias thought, terrified. I won't stand for it. Naruto roared, erupting in a pillar of red energy that flung everyone away from him into the barrier. Oh man. He's pissed, Naya. I mean, I appreciate that he cares so much, but would he relax? Kuroko shouted as the wind picked up. Suddenly, a soft laugh was heard before someone spoke, their voice amused. So, you won't stand for it being a crime to look out for those who matter to you, eh? You two really are a pair. The voice changed from amused to wistful as it finished. He would have loved to have met you. Kuroko tensed in recognition of the voice's owner. She's here already. A magic array appeared and a small arm shot out of it, reaching forward and grabbing Naruto by the back of his head before slamming him into the ground with one hand. I understand your rage, but this is neither the time nor place. Still, you have an impressive level of moral fiber to find the Nico sisters past such an affront. The hand pressed down firmly on Naruto's head as a petite girl in a gothic Lolita outfit fully stepped out of the portal. Calm down, she ordered, tightening their grip on Naruto until he cut off the chakra flow. She looked pleased at that, before she frowned as he looked away in shame. Sorry, he murmured. The girl held up a hand, forestalling any further explanations before helping him stand up. I know already. And don't assume I'm displeased. I'm actually glad to see someone who has your impressive stores of power has such a powerful sense of right and wrong. Kuroka gaped at the sight of the person who had gotten Naruto to remember to control himself. Boss? What are you doing here, Naya? Ophis turned to her subordinate with a calm smirk. I'm here to personally check on our potential recruit. Recruit? Asked Naruto and Rias in tandem while Kuroka dropped her barrier. Yes, I believe I stated that quite clearly. There was a hint of amusement in her tone. But first, there is something that he should know. The other members of Rias's peerage and Yuba Luna walked up to them while Naruto looked curious. What do you mean? The petite goddess shook her head, losing her smirk for a straight face. This is something you need to see. It wouldn't be the same if I just told you. She then turned to the side, producing a portal from thin air and walking up to it. Stopping just in front of it, she turned back to him expectantly. He looked anxious at the possibilities, turning to the others to see what they were thinking. The girls gave him supportive looks while Kiba looked curious and Issei just looked lost. Turning back to her, he asked, "Can they come too?" She frowned slightly, though it was hard to see for those who weren't looking for it. It might not be the best idea. This is something that will be hard for you to witness. That's all the more reason for them to come, he argued firmly. If this will be as hard as you say, then I'll need their support. The others nodded in agreement, and both Rias and Kuroka stepped closer to him, though they both gave each other small glares. Ophis sighed, but nodded. Fine, but don't say that I didn't warn you. With her piece said, she walked through the portal followed by the others. What greeted them on the other side of the portal was the top of a mountain cliffside. The goddess was already standing at the edge of the cliff looking down. Frowning, Naruto stepped over to her side before gasping at the sight of a large civilization left in flame and ruin. By the kami, whispered the Uzumaki, horrified at the scene below. What the hell happened here? Ophis-sama? Kuroka asked, looking to her boss in confusion. This place was once a proud nation that was brought into existence by two legends, and then brought forth two more legends, answered Ophis, and Rias went wide-eyed as she started to get an idea of where they were. You can't mean dash. She began, but the Infinity Dragonis cut her off. This place is the ruined village hidden in the leaves. Naruto's eyes widened to their limit while he recalled in shock. No. You're lying. This can't be my home. Akeno looked to him sadly before glaring at Ophis. Goddess or not, this woman was hurting the man that had gained a place in her heart. Why did you bring him here? Ophis turned to her with her expression blank. There is something here that he needs. By this point, Naruto had already leapt down to the ruins followed a concerned Rias while Aisha asked, what could he need from here, Ophis-san? The goddess regarded the nun devil and answered, the moon to his son. The last Uzumaki slowly walked through the ashes and ruins of the settlement before him. His head turned constantly, taking in all of the destruction and death around him. This can't be the Leaf Village, he whispered to himself, trying desperately to deny Ophis's words. He stopped walking, eyes dulling sadly as Rias walked up to him. Gently grabbing his hand, she asked softly, are you gonna be okay? I don't know, Red-chan, he answered. I just can't believe this is the Leaf. It can't be. She looked to him sadly, squeezing his hand as she led him through more of the ruins. She didn't want to believe it either, and she desperately wished it was a lie. However, she knew that Naruto had to see it all just to be certain. Her body was jerked back slightly when Naruto stopped suddenly. She turned to him and saw his eyes wide in horror. She looked to where he was staring and gasped softly when she saw a charred skeleton wearing a nearly disintegrated chef's apron. In the rubble next to it was a ruined sign that had a large ramen bowl as the picture. The skeleton itself was feminine in build, and she quickly realized who it was. Oh no. I aim, she mentally said, turning back to the Uzumaki. Aine, he choked out. No. Rias was quick to hug him as she saw the tears forming in his eyes. As soon as she did, he broke and fell to his knees as he cried. She rubbed his back and head as he wept in her bosom, mentally cursing that the first time he came into contact with her girls was during a moment of grief. I'm so sorry, Naruto-kun, she whispered as she comforted him, letting him weep. Boss, what the hell happened here, Naya? Asked Kuroko with a frown. You could have just let Naruto-kun live in the world he was sent to without having to see this place. He could have remained blissfully ignorant, Naya. And yet I brought him here, retorted the Gothic-styled woman. For 2 reasons I brought him here. The first is that I wanted him to see that he had something new to fight for, and what better way than retaliation for the death of his home and loved ones. Kiba stepped up and queried, why exactly do you need him to have something to fight for? Warriors like him are like the swords of the samurai. When a samurai has something to fight for, say their lord or homeland, then the blade is forever sharp so that it can always be ready. But when a samurai loses that purpose, becoming a ronin, the blade dulls over time, slowly losing that edge it once had in its prime. Yubaluna glared at Ophis, realizing what she wanted. You're playing on his emotions so that he could stay sharpened. I bet you even know who did this, don't you? She accused, waving her arm to the devastation behind her. I won't deny that I know who did this, but it is as I said before, began the Dragoness, showing has a much bigger impact than simply telling. Aisha clasped her hands over her chest sadly. Please, who did this to his home? Why do you need him to fight for you? Hasn't he fought enough? The rest of Rias's peerage all looked down solemnly, remembering what their king had told them about Naruto and his link to her favorite manga series. The Uzumaki had been in countless fights, and most of them placed his life at risk or weighed down the stress of his Jinchuriki status upon his shoulders. It was during the last battles of the Fourth Great Shinobi War that the stress of everything nearly got to him, as well as the guilt of many people dying for his sake. They all believed that he had been through enough after hearing that. Ophis, surprisingly, showed a visible reaction to Asia's questions. Her eyes dulled a bit and she looked away, almost in guilt. The 2 Nico sisters also saw her eyes get misty for the faintest of moments before Ophis recomposed herself. I know my methods may seem harsh, but his power will be needed against the one responsible for this, stated the goddess before she disappeared. The others turned back to the ruins before they all began to make their way down. It was unclear how long he cried after seeing the charred remains of his sister figure, but he was grateful that Rias was there with him to provide comfort and support. At the present moment, she was gently leading him through more of the ruins, holding his hand supportively. He was offering directions in a soft tone, telling her how to get to the Hokage Tower, or at least its ruins. It became clear that he was having trouble accepting everything, but Rias saw that his gaze at the ruins had become far more solemn after witnessing Aime's corpse. She wanted to curse the Dragoness for bringing the man she had feelings for here. But at the same time, she couldn't help but think that this was something that he needed to see, cruel as it may be. A weak cough brought them out of their thoughts and they turned to try and find the source. After a few moments, they frowned and wondered if they were hearing things before a weak voice called out, "Someone! Help!" Naruto's eyes widened as he recognized the voice and he rushed over to a pile of dirt, charred wood, and broken stucco. He frantically dug through it and Rias rushed over to help before the person beneath was slowly revealed. The 2 pulled the man out and he coughed out the dust and ash trapped in his lungs before blearily looking at them, surprising them both at the eye in his left socket. "Sensei? Kikushina-senpai?" he asked weakly. "No," Naruto started. "Kakashi-sensei, it's me, Naruto." The man's mismatching eyes gradually regained their focus and Kakashi Hatake took in the form of his once missing student and friend. "Naruto. We thought we had lost you." The blonde gave a slightly bitter smile, and Rias saw that he was forcing himself to. "I thought so, too. What the hell happened here, sensei?" The man looked skyward, eyes unfocused once more as he relived the horrible memory. "Fire." That was all we saw after a strange rip opened up in the sky. Fire, and 2 terrifying amber eyes. By the kami, it was worse than the night Kurama was released from Kushina-senpai. Said Bu raised a furry brow at that. What the hell could have left a more terrifying image than me at full power? "We tried to get the people to safety, but there was little time to react to anything," continued the Silverette Jonin. "The fire rained down on us, setting the leaf into an inferno while many ninja tried to hold it off." "It sounds like it was a dragon that attacked," Rias commented with a frown. But what dragon would have the power to break world barriers? The dragon's name is Great Red, answered a familiar voice, making the three of them look to see Ophis walking up to them slowly. Like me, he is a being of immense power, enough to rival my own. He was able to kick me out of my home between the worlds, taking it as his own before he began to destroy anything capable of reaching his domain. But why would he attack? Began Naruto before he slowly stopped, realization dawning. The Rinnegan. He was after Sasuke's eye. Rias looked to the very eye that was resting in Kakashi's left socket. That was the eye that brought you to our world. If Great Red is after items like that, he must not have sensed it until Sasuke used it on you, Naruto-kun. Kakashi would have loved to ask his student at the beautiful redhead that seemed to already be quite close to him, but it wasn't the time or place. Not to mention he was still incredibly weak and he knew he wouldn't last long. He had been buried alive under rubble, forced to breathe in toxic air poisoned by the ashes of Great Red's inferno. But there was one more thing he could do for his student, for the last leaf shinobi of the world. Naruto. Turning to him, Naruto asked, "What is it, sensei?" "I want you to take Sasuke's eye," answered the man, surprising the Uzumaki and Rias. "That dragon killed off everyone here because of it, and I know I don't anywhere near enough power to hold him off. I only survived out of dumb luck, but even then I won't last for long." "He's right," confirmed Ophis. "The ash in the air is extremely toxic to those without strong immune systems or healing abilities." "What about Aisha?" Naruto asked, worried for his sensei. "She could heal him with her twilight healing, right?" Naruto cut off the jonin, making his old student look to him sadly. "I'm glad you want to try and help me, but don't." "Why not?" "I'm sick of losing people I care about, Kakashi. In one fell swoop, I lost my home, my friends, Granny, Shizune, Iruka. I lost the people I called comrades, and now you want me not to help you. You want me to lose you too." Tears were streaming down his eyes, and Kakashi stared back resolutely while Rias looked to the Uzumaki solemnly. "You won't lose me, Naruto. You haven't lost everyone. Remember, the will of fire lives on so long as there is a single leaf shinobi. You carry that fire within you, Naruto, the fire of thousands of people and hundreds of leaf shinobi. You carry the wills of your friends, your mentors, your loved ones, and even your parents who left their own wills of fire to you the day you were born." Naruto was choking on his sobs, trying to stop the flow of his tears. "It hurts, sensei. I've lost so much. I don't want to lose anyone else." "Then take this eye, and use it to make sure that no one else you love will be lost," declared Kakashi with resolution in his tone. "You are the strongest man I know, Naruto, and it's not because of your power. Your heart is the strongest I have ever seen, and I know for a fact that you'll never forget us, that you'll make sure to live for us. The village called you a hero, Naruto." He then smiled, and for the first time Naruto realized that the man was without his legendary face mask. "Live on as the hero they knew you were." Staring down at his sensei, Naruto saw that the man had absolute trust and faith in him. The lack of the man's mask allowed Naruto to see much more of that very trust, and he couldn't help but give a weak smile back as another tear fell. "Okay, sensei," he answered after a moment. "I promise that I'll live, that I'll keep the will of fire burning strong, and that I'll make sure everyone here didn't die for nothing. I'll find Great Red and make him answer for what he did." Ma. "I know you will," Kakashi said back in certainty. "Now, take this eye so that you could use it against that damnable overgrown lizard." Naruto gave a weak laugh at that, nodding at his old teacher. Turning to Ophis, he asked, "Could you implant Sensei's eye into me?" The goddess offered a small, but real, smile at him and nodded. "It would be my pleasure, Naruto Uzumaki," she said before she stepped up to them and used her power to gently remove the eye from the jonin, not wanting to cause him any pain in front of the man she wanted on her side. Once the eye was removed, she held it to his forehead, confusing him and surprising Rias. An eye like this would work best in the third eye region. Much like an old friend of mine, I believe that it would offer you the best benefit if placed here. With that said, she used her power to open up Naruto's forehead and create a new eye socket before fusing the Rinnegan eye into it. At the same time, a black moon marking appeared on Naruto's left palm, the yin to the yang that was his sun mark. Ophis then stepped back, just as the others finally made it to them. Once she did, Naruto opened up all three of his eyes, surprising them all with the Rinnegan eye on his forehead while the blues of his natural eye seemed to glow brighter. Smiling with his remaining eye, Kakashi said to his comrade, "You look ready for anything now, Naruto?" I leave my will of fire to you. Naruto smiled back at his teacher, and the Jonin was already able to see visions of countless Leaf citizens and shinobi standing behind him while the man's parents stood closest to him. I accept the fire you give me, Kakashi-sensei. The man kept his smile as he laid his head back, letting out slow breaths that were already growing weaker. Sensei? Senpai? Rin? Obito? Father? I'll be there soon, he whispered as he fully accepted death's embrace. Naruto kept his smile, though tears once again fell as he stood up and offered a low bow of respect to the Jonin of the Leaf. Thank you for everything, Kakashi. I hope you rest in peace. Rias moved to stand beside him and offered a bow of her own before she was then joined by Kuroka, Akeno, Yubaluna, and the others in the group. All of them offered their own respectful bow while Ophis gave her own nod of respect. You're a nobleman, Kakashi Hatake, she said in a low tone so no one would hear her. Like your student, I hope you find peace alongside those you cherished in life. As for your student, I'll give you my word that I'll help him keep this will of fire you spoke of burning strong. She then looked up, smiling at the sight of the sun hitting the village through the cloudy skies, as if the heavens were offering their own respect to the fallen village. After a moment, she then looked to the Uzumaki who was being offered support by his friends, and her smile grew softer. We immortals have to stick together, after all. And that's what happened, reported Naruto despondently as he sat with the remaining 4 Kage of the elemental nations. Standing with him were Rias, who helped tell his story, and Yubaluna, who simply chose to be by his side since she owed him greatly. The others were waiting outside of the meeting room while Ophis had left earlier, though she didn't say where she was going. It was the day after the discovery of Great Red's desolation of the Leaf Village. While he wanted time to mourn for those he lost, the sole survivor of the Leaf Village knew that he had to let the other villages know what had happened, if only to warn them that they too could be attacked. It was easy to get them all together in Iron Country, since he was known for his mastery of the shadow clone technique, as well as being the fastest ninja in all the nations. The 4th Raikage, sighed and rubbed his sole arm through his hair. To think that an entire village could be wiped out so easily. It's a terrifying notion, agreed my Terumi, the 5th Mizukage. And you said it was a dragon that did this? Nodding, Naruto answered, yes, one that is called Great Red. According to Ophis, Red matches her in power and was able to press her out of her home. And where exactly is this home of hers? Queried Noki, the 3rd Tsukikage. Rias was the one who answered, she lives in the dimensional gap, which is placed between all of the worlds. It's also known simply as the Void, which is what gave her the title Void Dragon. And where is she now? Asked Mai curiously. That's something we don't know, Naruto replied. She stayed with us for a moment and then said she needed to leave for something. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm giving her a chance. Gaara, the 5th Kazekage and Naruto's brother in all but blood, spoke up after staying silent. Can you trust her? Honestly, I'm not sure. She showed me what had happened to my home, which gives me mixed feelings, but at the same time she did so in hopes of me helping her with her own problem. So, I'm going to wait, see what she does next, and then go from there. Mifune, the samurai leader, then asked, and what will you do now, Uzumaki-san? Will you seek out this Great Red? The blonde frowned and nodded. Yes. What he did was unforgivable, and I can't let this go unanswered. It may seem like vengeance, which is what drove Sasuke away, but I need to do this. His frown became a look of resolution as he continued, I can't rest knowing that I did nothing against the one who committed genocide against my home, my friends, and those I love. I have to do this. The other leaders had thoughtful looks at that while Gaara closed his eyes in acceptance, trusting the man who helped him see past his own madness. He had faith in Naruto, and just thinking about everything he had done made him all the more sure that he wouldn't become enslaved to his desire for justice, not like the Ucha. How will you go about this? Noki asked. If this dragon is as powerful as you say, then it will be like facing down Madara at full strength once again. Naruto shook his head at that. No, Madara in his prime wouldn't compare. Even Kaguya doesn't add up, which makes me anxious. I can feel how strong Ophis is whenever she's around, and her power is greater than Kaguya's was. If I'm going to face Red, I need to get stronger and master the chakra that Hagoromo gave me, as well as the eye Sasuke had gained from him. The others looked up to his forehead, where the eye was closed and the skin was blended together as if nothing was there. For all anyone knew, he had no third eye to be seen. But, even if I master both of these things, I know I'll still fall up short, he continued, gaze downward. So that's why. He then looked back up to them. I need to leave. I can't stay in the elemental nations since my presence could act like a beacon for Red. He's after items that could travel across dimensions like the moon's eye. I won't put anyone else here at risk. And if he comes anyway? A asked with a raised brow. You can't just go off on your own when there's a threat this major targeting us. But he's not targeting you specifically, Luna said, standing at Naruto's defense. Naruto just said that he's after items that can penetrate the void. Unless you have something like that in any of your villages, then you'll be safe. The blonde nodded to her in thanks before addressing the others. I need you all to understand that I'm leaving because I've had enough people die for me and because of me. I won't have anyone else's death on my conscience if I can help it. You may be against it, but I've made up my mind. Mifune nodded. And we will respect that choice, he declared, making everyone look to him. You've done the nations a great service your entire life, Naruto Uzumaki. The way I see it, this is just another method of you doing that service, even though you've done more than enough. He then surprised everyone when he stood from his seat and bowed at the waist to the Uzumaki. I wish you all of the luck the kami may grace you with. Rias and Luna winced at the statement, but they still smiled at the support the man had given Naruto. Gaara stood up next and gave Naruto a small smile. You already know my answer. I will support whatever decision you make, my brother. Naruto smiled back and nodded. I appreciate it, brother. Mai then stood up. Your actions throughout the war have made you both a hero and a legend, Uzumaki-kun. She gave a respectable nod with her own smile. Who am I to question you when you've done so much? This is going well, commented Kurama. But still, there's the fence-sitter and lightning rod to consider. Said fence-sitter sighed at the current situation. While I believe that your presence will be needed here, if only as a repellent for this dragon, I know what loss is. I know what it's like to feel like you failed those you care for. Floating up from his seat, he continued, denying you the chance to make sure those you lost didn't die for nothing would be cruel, for I would want to do the same as you if I were in your shoes. Go, get stronger, and then fight for those who left their wills to you. Many in the room were surprised at the elderly Kage's words. He was known for his stubbornness and his militaristic outlook, choosing any side that would help his village prosper, hence his fence-sitter title. So, hearing him support someone who was far more emotional in terms of choices was quite the shock. I still think you're a fool for doing this, A commented, making Naruto frown. If I am, he began, then I'm a damn proud fool. That made the muscular Kage smirk and chuckle. Good. The world needs fools like you to lead the way. Standing up, he held out a fist to the son of his late rival. Don't disappoint me, Uzumaki. I want to see you return with your head held high, and victory flowing from. Naruto gave the man a grin and pounded his fist with a firm nod. You got it. With that said, the meeting was adjourned and the Kage were all taken back to their villages with the help of Naruto's clones. Before the clones dispelled, each of the Kage reaffirmed their support and wished Naruto luck. With the original, he had taken everyone else back to his ruined home and they all looked up to the Hokuge mountain from the village center. Naruto, though, was standing on the mountainside and using his chakra to carve out a message beneath the Hokuge faces. Everyone waited patiently as he worked diligently, pouring out his grief and turning it into strength to make him leave a final reminder of his home and the people in it. When he finally finished, it was dawn of the next morning, and the devils all saw the message illuminated by the rising sun, a quote that had stuck with Naruto ever since the late third Hokuge had said it to him. When the tree leaves dance, one shall find flames. The fire shadow will illuminate the village, and once again, tree leaves shall bud anew. While they read the message, Naruto made his way to them and turned around so that he could see his work. A smile, small yet no less strong, formed on his face as he said, "It's just like the old man said." Rias nodded as she stood next to him. "Whenever you're ready, Naruto-kun, we'll be here to listen. And we'll be with you every step of the way." He turned to her, and his smile grew a little before looking to the others. They all gave him supporting smiles, even Koneko, and his smile grew even more. "Thank you. What is this?" She couldn't see, couldn't move, and she barely had any room to breathe. And her left arm. "Why do I feel this pain from my arm? I don't like this. How did I get here?" Panic welled up in her. She was trapped and alone and didn't know how or why. Suddenly, there was a sound like stone being ripped apart and a roar of some giant creature before she was blinded by light and fresh air hit her. When her vision returned, she found herself looking at a cute young girl with long black hair down until her hips and grey eyes. She was dressed in an outfit that was fit for gothic Lolita girls, but hers left her torso bare save for two black, X-shaped covers over her nipples. Her ears differed from a normal human's as they had pointed tips, although her long black hair made this feature difficult to notice. The woman blinked. This girl looked familiar, almost like her old friend. Wait. No way. It couldn't be. Ophis? She asked. The girl's brow twitched and her expression easily read restrained annoyance before she sighed with resignation and nodded. Yes, it's me, she groaned. Immediately, the previously trapped woman doubled over, howling in laughter. I knew you had a childish taste, but this is too much even for you. She exclaimed before she laughed harder, nearly falling over. Stop laughing, damn it. This is serious. Ophis said with a snarl, showing fanged teeth. You haven't changed at all. Tell me. Do you still enjoy using your shapeshifting to sneak into Disney theme parks for free? She asked with a beaming grin, fully aware of Ophis's ability as a true shapeshifter. The Void Dragoness was able to freely manipulate her body shape and size so as to assume any form that she chooses, regardless of the age, race, or gender. Ophis went red in the face at that. Why did I even free you? The goddess shouted, throwing her hands into the air. Why did she have to bring that up? So Ophis was a closet Disney fan. So what? She glared at her old friend, already regretting this. But with what Great Red had done, it was needed to help make sure what happened to Naruto's home didn't happen anywhere else. Salvation came in the form of the woman quirking a brow and looking to her left arm. However, it's gone. She screamed horrified. I can't believe it, my arm is completely gone. Relax. I know someone who can fix it. Ophis reassured. Fix it? How can anyone fix it? Are you insane, Imuto-chan? I am missing my arm. Right, blandly replied Ophis. Because an alien princess traveling to different dimensions in the company of a demonic knight that valued humanity's well-being, a shape-shifting dragon born from infinite nothingness, and a giant red dragon that acted like a biker is any less believable. At her friend's words, the woman calmed down. Ophis was right, and they both knew it. Taking deep breaths, the now freed individual steadied her panic. The Infinity Dragoness sighed, figuring that giving her old friend something else to think about would help her. A smile tugged at her lips as she asked, Remember how we first met? The woman nodded, gaining a melancholy smile. Yes. I still remember meeting you, Great Red, and Sparda. I was looking for somewhere to help my people migrate to and repopulate after Momoshiki and his subordinate, Kinshiki, caused the civil war on my home planet. Her smile fell for a look of sorrow. They tried to use my race's souls to empower their own Shinju tree. After you all helped me stop them, since I wasn't strong enough on my own, we started traveling together. Her smile returned. I remember how you looked older then, like your early 20s. What happened? Only liked having an above-average waist and backside? She teased. Ophis went redder than the hair of every Gremory in history put together and turned away with a half nose in the air. I'll have you know that, having tried it, I found having a large chest is unneeded extra weight, and it's highly uncomfortable. The one Ophis had freed laughed once more, but it was much softer. I honestly forgot how much I miss seeing you get so bent out of shape. How is the old group, then? She asked with a smile. Though it was difficult to tell, Ophis winced at that. The old group. How in the 9 levels of hell and beyond could Ophis tell her that Great Red had expelled her from the dimensional gap after killing Sparda? The old group was gone, destroyed by Great Red. Naruto was in the middle of a chess game with Rias as they waited for Ophis to return. Everyone else was watching with interest as the Gremory heiress was biting her nails and trying to think of a move while Naruto sat calmly. How the hell is he beating Bucho? Whispered Issei to Koneko, who shrugged. ARA, looks like Bucho has finally met her match, Akeno teased, earning a shushing sound from the red-headed young woman. Kuroka had taken advantage of the situation and was resting in Naruto's lap in her cat form, curled close to his stomach, otherwise known as the location of his chakra core. Behind him stood Yuba Luna, who held a professional look as best as she could. Mentally though, she was thinking of ways to skin felines. Damn it, muttered Rias as she moved her knight, only to have her last bishop taken by Naruto's own knight. How are you doing so well? You said you've never played before. He shrugged. I haven't. I just act how I see fit, same as in combat. He waved his arm over the board and continued, this doesn't just help with your rating games. My friend, Shikamaru, he paused at remembering a deceased friend, he was the best strategist I had ever met. Lazy as all hell, but when you put him in this kind of scenario, no one could match him. Ria smiled as she moved her pawn. Tell me more about your friends, she said softly. I may have read about a parallel of your life, but hearing it from you is better. Well, with Shikamaru were Choji and Aino. They were close, just like their fathers. In fact, their 3 clans were infamous for their combination attacks. Aino was definitely one of the more fashionable girls I knew, while Choji had a heart as big as his stomach. He chuckled fondly. I remember how I barely beat him one time in a ramen eating contest. He always said that people who could eat like an Akamichi were good people. Aisha smiled at his words. What about your other friends, senpai? Let's see. Then there's teammate which had Kiba, no, not you, he said, cutting off the devil Kiba from commenting. There was also Hinata, who was kind and caring to a fault. She risked her life for me once when I was trapped by pain. His eyes dulled. It was horrifying to watch, but I was happy to see her come back from it. Lastly was Shino. He was all about logic and was very quiet, but he was a good friend. I've never met anyone more interested in insects than him, even amongst his clan. Insects? Kiba asked. Did his clan use them? That's exactly what they used. They were capable of draining people of their chakra at incredible rates. He moved his rook to take Rias' own as he continued, then there was my team. Sasuke. Well, he was once a close friend and someone I wanted to save since he was like me in terms of loss and pain. He just never accepted and moved on from it, and it cost me in the end. He sighed at the thought of the Ucha before shaking his head. But I digress. Sakura was once a crush of mine, especially when I had first started out as a ninja. Of course, she only had eyes for Sasuke, like a bunch of other girls, but I still felt like I had a chance back then. Though, as we grew together as a team, I slowly let go of that crush and started to see her as family. To me, she was like an older sister that a younger brother tries to protect. Yubaluna spoke up at that while Rias moved her queen. You two were close then? Not at first, admitted the Uzumaki. She didn't like me and I annoyed her a lot. But by the time the Fourth War ended, we had a very strong bond as teammates and friends. He moved his own queen, putting Rias in check. Then there was Team 9. Lee was a believer in hard work, and he was someone I looked up to. He pushed past so many obstacles that I'm still blown away at what he accomplished. 10-10. She was the best with any weapon she could get her hands on. He laughed at a memory. One time, I accidentally surprised her and nearly became a pincushion in less than 3 seconds. While crazy about weapons, she was still a great friend and someone you'd appreciate watching your back. Lastly was Neji, though he died during the war. He once believed in fate and destiny, and it took me beating him in a fight to get him to see that the cage he thought he was trapped in was able to be opened by him. After that, we became good friends and even sparred occasionally. His gentle fist was damn near deadly when he wanted it to be. Rias kept her smile as she tipped over her king, admitting defeat. What about your godparents? Tsunade and Jiraiya. He chuckled as he continued, I always called them granny and pervert since it was true, at least to me. She tried to hide her real age while he peeped on women remorselessly. It was always funny when it was Tsunade that gave him the beating. His chuckling died down for a fond look. But still, those two were like the parents I never had. Sure, they had their own skeletons in the closet, but they still cared about me and helped me become both a better ninja and a better man. He wiped a tear as he looked up at the skies above the village. By the kami, I miss them all so much. There were others too, but it'd take too long to really get into them. The Gremory heiress reached over and grabbed his arm gently, making him look to her face and see her giving a reassuring smile. Wherever they are, I have no doubt that they're proud of you, Naruto-kun. So long as you never forget them, they'll always be with you. He returned the smile and nodded. Yeah? I know. Suddenly, a dense pressure with a chakra origin was felt by everyone, and it made Naruto and the Nico sisters tense. What the hell? Kuroka gasped, being startled from her relaxed position. What's with this? I can't even call it chakra. The Black Nico gasped. This feeling. It couldn't possibly be. Kurama said with growing concern. Naruto tensed and whipped around, and his eyes, all three of them, widened in sheer shock at the arrival. Oh shit. As if things weren't bad enough. How the hell did you get loose? Everyone turned and saw Ophis standing, well, floating really, next to a pale-skinned woman in possession of very delicate facial features. She had extremely long, sweeping white hair that touched the ground, while the features most noticeable were two brown horns which stuck out from her head, though one was broken and she was missing an arm. She possessed distinctive eyes, characterized by enlarged and featureless white iris with no visible pupils, and she also had a third eye on the center of her forehead that had eyelids which parted vertically. Her eyebrows were cut very short as a symbol of nobility, and she wore a dark shade of lipstick on her lips with an equally dark shade of nail polish on her long fingernails. She wore a transitional high-collared kimono, which was adorned with intricate lines that were gold and purple and had tomo running down the center and edges of the gown. Along with the kimono, a pair of wooden zori sandals and ankle-high tabi socks with a separation between the big toe and other toes. Ophis looked surprised at his expression and exclamation. You know her already? Good, then that makes things much easier, seeing as she'll be your instructor with learning to master and control your new powers, Naruto. Naruto looked stunned while Rias was outright horrified. Ophis turned to everyone else in the group. All of you who do not know, this is my old friend, Kaguya Tsutsuki. Before the new woman could speak, she was forced to dodge a punch Naruto threw at her while an after-image of him faded from his previous position. He threw out a vicious combination of punches and kicks as he floated in midair with his young chakra, face set in a fierce scowl. I won't let you kill anyone else, Kaguya. Wait! She cried out, weaving out of his attacks and distancing herself. Please let me explain. Explain what? That you're not the self-righteous bitch you came off as when you were trying to steal everyone's chakra for your own. He roared. I felt sorry for you back then. I first thought you were just grieving over your sons leaving you, but then you let that bastard Zetsu cause so much misery. The rabbit goddess cringed at that. I don't wish to fight you, Naruto Uzumaki. I only wish to explain the truth that Ophis told me. He was barely restraining himself, and everyone saw it, as he turned to the void Dragoness. What the hell is she talking about, Ophis? The Gothic-styled girl sighed and rubbed the bridge of her nose. To put it bluntly, she was corrupted when she took a bite of the Shinju fruit. As soon as she tasted it, her mind shut down and the will of the Shinju, who you knew as Zetsu, took over. It influenced her, made her lose control of who she once was, and caused her to act in the what your world's legends portrayed her as. She gave the Uzumaki a serious look and finished. Everything she had done throughout her stay in this world was lost to her. She remembers nothing from when she took that first bite. Nodding with a shedding tear, Kaguya continued, I never knew that I had sons, that I gave this world chakra, or that I caused so much pain. I'm not asking for forgiveness since what you've been through is too much to simply forget. She gave him a begging look, dropping down to the ground and kowtowing to him. I only ask for a chance. Please, let me try and make up and atone for every wrong I have done. Tears were falling from her cheeks, dampening the earth beneath her as her eyes were clenched tightly with restrained grief. Please? I'm begging you. His three eyes were narrowed on her as he descended from his floating position, landing a few feet in front of her submissive form. I should seal you away forever for what you did. His clenched fists were shaking hard, practically trembling as he fought back his rage. And as much as I want to, I can't. Her eyes widened in shock, and she slowly raised her head to meet his gaze. So, you? Don't mistake this for mercy, he said, cutting her off. I just don't want to kill someone who was an unwilling instigator. Zetsu was responsible, and I killed him before you were sealed away, so that leaves me with no one to truly blame. His arms were crossed over his chest and he continued, you say you want a chance for atonement. She nodded desperately, still looking to him pleadingly. Then help me control these powers of mine, and help me take down Great Red for what he did to the people I loved. He turned around so that she wouldn't see the uncertainty on his face. Maybe in the meantime, I'll be able to give you a real chance. Her smile nearly split her face as she bowed again. Thank you. She choked out. I swear to you that I will not waste this chance. And besides, she raised herself up to her feet, and he turned around just in time to see her own look of anger. Red needs to pay for what he did to Sparda-senpai. Sparda! Cried out all of the devils save for Issei and Aisha. Why you mean the legendary Dark Knight? Rias asked with wide eyes. I thought that he was just a myth. No, Ophis said with a surprisingly fierce tone. Sparda was real, and he was once the leader of the group we were in together. It was him, Kaguya, myself, and Great Red that banded together as beings above normal devils, angels, fallen, and humans. In truth, Sparda was stronger than all of us, and yet he had the biggest heart as well. He cared for all races and the unity between them all, to the point of actually falling in love with a human priestess. Naruto mentally raised a brow at the bitter undertone in Ophis's words at the mention of the priestess. But if he was stronger than you all, how did Red kill him? Ophis fired back calmly. How did your once friend Sasuke manage to send you away so easily? That gave him the answer. He wasn't expecting such an act from Sasuke, and it cost him. Sparda must have been just as, if not more, trusting in the beings he saw as friends and allies. To make the act even more unforgivable, Red used the gift that Sparda had given him to do the deed, the sword known as Rebellion. She then held out her left hand, and a sheathed katana shimmered into existence in her grip. This is the sister sword, Yamato. I was able to keep this from Red since it is one of the only items that can reach the void. He inspected the sword, seeing the intricate designs, the dragon design on the pommel, and the ornate gold wrappings. It's beautiful, he complimented. I'm guessing this was the gift that Sparda gave you? Yes, and I have kept it safe ever since. It is one of the last things I have to remember him by. She sent the weapon away and gave him a ghost of a smile. You remind me of him quite a bit, Naruto Uzumaki. I could almost say that he was reincarnated in you. Rias, Akeno, and Kuroka blinked at that, intrigued at the notion. The heiress made a mental note to ask her brother about it. Meanwhile, the Nico took on her natural form and asked, so, what exactly would Kaguya-san be teaching Foxikun? The Uzumaki blushed at the title while three particular devil women glared at the stray cat. Kaguya, being fond of teasing others, especially her declared Imuto, Ophis, smirked at the sight and answered, I'll be teaching him how to truly use his third eye, his chakra, and the truth-seeking orbs. I don't remember what I did over the millennia, but I still remember how to use the abilities the Shinju gave me. What about those bones you used? Queried the blonde. That comes later since you will need to train to use all of the elements first. We'll start when you feel you are ready, Uzumaki-san. He sighed at her. Look, if you're going to be teaching me and we're going to be spending a lot of time together during this, then just call me Naruto. It will help me ease into this. She gave him a grateful look and nodded. Of course, Naruto-san. Ophis clapped her hands together with her eyes closed. Well, now that had been settled, I believe it's time we left. Turning to her fellow, yet unknown to him, immortal, she asked, anything you wish to do before we leave? He nodded once before turning back to his home. Everyone, wait for me, he whispered. I'll make Red answer for what he did to you. Holding out a fist like he did during the Chunin exam finals, he finished, I promise. With his final piece said, he followed Ophis through her portal. As he passed through it, he felt a hand gently grab his and he turned to see that it was, surprisingly, Yuba Luna. She was giving him a supportive smile as she said, no matter what happens, I'll help you do this, Naruto-sama. He blinked at what she called him before he smiled and shook his head. Just call me Naruto, and thank you, Luna-chan. She blushed beautifully at the added suffix and just silently enjoyed his hand in hers, expertly ignoring the looks her fellow female devils gave her. Just as she said, she would do whatever it took to help the man that freed her from her heartless king. And if she ended up winning a part of his heart in the process, all the better for her. The giggle that was heard from her would bother three women for a long while, and the newest immortal was none the wiser. Do I really have to stay here? Asked Naruto to his red-headed friend as he stood inside of her home in Kuo. I can find my own place, Red-chan. I don't want to impose on you. The young woman, with her back to him as she set up some sheets on the guest bed, smiled at his consideration. It's no trouble at all, Naruto-kun. To be honest, this place is too spacious for just Akeno-chan and myself to be here. It'd be nice to have some company. And you're sure, Luna, and I won't be in the way? He pressed. He heard her sigh before she turned around, stepped up to him, and poked his chest. Listen here, I said it wasn't any trouble. Now stop worrying so much and just enjoy the fact that I'm putting up with your ramen-loving butt. She finished this with a playful wink that made him roll his eyes, but smile. Fine, I won't bring it up again. Thank you for this. You're welcome. It's the least I could do for everything you've done, she said as she led him to the kitchen where Akeno was preparing dinner. You don't owe me anything, Rias, the Uzumaki assured. I was more than happy to help you out. She stopped in front of him, just a few steps away from the kitchen. That's where you're wrong, Naruto. You've given me one of the greatest things I could ever have asked for, freedom of choice. She turned to face him once again, a frown marring her beautiful face. If it wasn't for you, I don't know if my peerage and I could have won against Riza. I'm not saying I don't have faith in them. You're saying that you knew how the odds were against you, he supplied, and she nodded. When you showed up with my brother and said you'd be helping us, it was like all of my fears were either erased or lessened. And when you beat Riza, I felt as if I wasn't carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders anymore. Her smile returned as a stray tear fell. I felt free, and you have no idea how much it means to me. He felt his face flush as he rubbed his head bashfully, eyes closed as he did so. It was because of this that he wasn't prepared for Rias to close in, lean her face up to his, and softly press her lips against his own. Caught off guard, he was only able to freeze and enjoy the taste of their kiss. After a few moments, she pulled back and smiled mischievously before entering the kitchen, leaving him standing in the hallway with his face lit up like a Christmas tree. Absently, he raised a hand to his lips and touched them, somehow still feeling their intimate moment. Whoa, he gasped out. Whoa indeed, Naruto-sama, agreed a teasing voice, making him choke in surprise and turn to see Ubeluna leaning on a door frame that led to her room. The woman had a smirk on her face while her arms were crossed beneath her impressive bust. How bold of her, don't you think? You were watching? He asked as he grew red in embarrassment. Indeed I was, she answered as she moved over to him. And she's not the only one who's grateful to you. I hear Akeno-senpai is also thankful of you for helping her, quite thankful indeed. Poor Naruto didn't fully understand as the emphasis flew over his head. What did I do? Rolling her eyes, the woman patted his cheek with a small smile. But by everything, you are dense, she added, not answering his question. You helped her through some personal issues, at least that's what she told me. Holding up 2 fingers, she continued, that's 2 people. And let's not forget, she held up a 3rd finger as her smile grew slightly, you also helped me. You gave me liberation from a pig of a devil that only saw me as a prize at best, a personal novelty at worst. He frowned at this. Did he ever? Take me? She supplied, and he nodded with a slight cringe. Thankfully, no. Heady petting was the farthest he went. I was lucky enough to have other members of the peerage distract him before he ever took me. That's better than what I expected, he sighed out. From what you said, I thought he had done worse than that. Like I said, I was lucky. Her smile returned as she patted his cheek once again. But it's sweet that you care. I'm lucky to have such a concerned master now. Master? He asked in shock before shaking his head adamantly. No, I refuse to be a master, she heard a hiss in his tone, to anyone, be they human, devil, or anything else. I'm not your master, Ubeluna. Your life is your own. Then respect my decision on what I want to do with my life, she argued, poking his chest. I want you to be my master. I want to be able to say I serve you, that I serve a man who treats anyone with kindness and isn't afraid to say what he feels. Her eyes narrowed and Naruto saw a determined gleam in them. I'm not going to back down from this. As far as I'm concerned, I'm yours, Naruto-sama, she declared before adding internally, and hopefully a part of your heart will be mine. The two had a stare down that seemed to drag on, neither of them withdrawing their stance on the matter. Kurama then chuckled in Naruto's head, adding his own opinion to the situation. She's got guts, I'll give her that. Willingly telling you that she wants you to be her master is as credible as it is entertaining. Now isn't the time, Kurama. I don't want to be a master to anyone, yelled Naruto in annoyance before he refocused on Ubeluna. Look, Luna, I'm not looking for anyone to serve me. If that's all you want from me, then you're free to leave. She recoiled as if struck. You don't want me? She whispered solemnly. Not in that manner, he clarified. I'm more than happy to be your friend, but you need to figure out what it is that you want. Think on it, okay? With a supportive pat on her shoulder, the blonde walked into the kitchen and left the devil woman to her thoughts. Standing in a familiar desert was Naruto as he stared at Kaguya and Ophis, who were floating across from him. The desert was one of the dimensions that the rabbit goddess was able to send people to, and the Uzumaki had first-hand experience with it. Any reason why we're here instead of back on Earth, or even the elemental nations? He asked with a raised brow. You do realize that things I'm going to teach you are very destructive and fatalistic, correct? Kaguya asked back rhetorically. You really want to run the risk of collateral damage? Point taken, he sighed before opening his third eye. So, what will we be working on first? She answered by bringing forth a pitch-black orb that floated above her palm before it began to orbit her like a small moon. We'll work on the Truth Seeker orbs first. You have some experience with these given your access to the enhanced Senjutsu, so it will be easier to get through. Also, Ophis cut in before she tossed Naruto a sheathed katana. I'll be teaching you how to use a sword. Kenjutsu? He asked with some confusion. Why? For this, the Dragoness answered as she summoned Yamato into her left palm. With Red having the rebellion, you'll need a weapon to counter him. Rebellion's magical properties allow it to cut through other energy-based things, including chakra. So, any weapon I make with the Truth Seeker orb can be cut down, but Yamato could block it? Exactly. But we need you to learn how to properly use a sword beforehand. He nodded as he unsheathed the sword and inspected the blade. It was balanced well, the blade was sharp, and the grip felt good. So, what first? He asked before his instinct screamed at him and he raised the sword just in time to block a strike from Ophis, who was smirking. Don't let up your guard for a moment, she advised as she held a pure black katana in her hand. It could be the last mistake you make. She then came at him with a flurry of slashes and stabs that he was hard-pressed to defend given her smaller frame, yet incredible speed. His third eye helped immensely in helping him anticipate strikes, but he still had to push his body to act accordingly in order to avoid being made into confetti. She then vanished from his sight and it was only thanks to his vast combat experience that he was able to bend forward from the waist down, avoiding being cut in two before he leaped away with his sword at the ready. Damn it, he cursed mentally. She'll really kill me if I don't take this seriously. He saw that the smirk had never left her face, and she was looking at him with the utmost confidence. Such an expression was far different from the usually stoic face he had come to associate her with. I don't know why she doesn't express herself more often. Why does she hide her feelings? He narrowed his eyes and took the initiative, crossing the distance between them in a blink as he struck with a backhanded style as if he was holding a kunai. Unfortunately, the sword was too long to fully utilize such a method, and Ophis capitalized on it with a flick of her wrist. The upward strike not only deflected the slash he was attempting, but it knocked the weapon out of his hand and pushed him back with its force. Damn, he cursed as he steadied himself, only to roll to his right to avoid a downward strike from the petite goddess. Coming out of his roll, he leapt to his sword and grabbed it before quickly rising with a spinning slash that successfully parried a pierce from Ophis. No time to recover lost weapons, right? He asked rhetorically. You're learning, she praised in a teasing manner as she gathered dark violet energy in her hand and began to fire at him rapidly. TCH, he grit out as he began to leap around the desert to avoid the projectiles, deflecting any that got too close. So much for straight Kenjutsu, he muttered before he created a hand-sized version of his Raisin Shuriken and hurled it at his opponent. As soon as it flew, he vanished with a burst of speed, reappearing right behind Ophis to engage her in another exchange of blades. He was using vague memories of the samurai sword style that he had witnessed to attack, hoping it would help him against her. To his relief, it did for a moment, but he was caught off guard when she struck him in the gut with a rising knee before she turned in place and sliced at the Raisin Shuriken, sending forth a thin energy wave that easily split the jutsu in two and destabilized it into nothing. Naruto rubbed his stomach at the hit, but he was smiling. He was enjoying the fight with the goddess, and he was able to see that she had the same sentiment. You're amazing, he praised as he caught his breath. Not even Madara made me this winded so quickly. Comparing me to a human with an eye mutation, are you? She questioned with a raised brow. I find that insulting, Naruto Uzumaki. He chuckled at her words. I'm just saying that this is a good fight. I should have sparred with goddesses years ago. Ophis regarded him at this, being reminded of Sparda at his words. Once again, she saw the legendary devil in Naruto, and it made her heart ache. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to fully control herself and Naruto saw her expression darken faintly as she turned away from him. We're done for today. Kaguya will take over now, she stated before she sent away the sword she was using and summoned forth a portal. Ophis? Naruto asked in concern, making her stop for a moment. You know, if you ever need someone to talk to. She stayed in place in front of her portal for a few more moments. Thank you, Naruto, she finally replied before she stepped through and disappeared. Once she was gone, Naruto sighed and sheathed his katana while Kaguya floated over to him. You know, she began, gaining his attention, I'm not surprised that you were able to see something was wrong with her. You have an incredible level of empathy for a human. Thanks, I guess. But that doesn't give me anything to really help her. I disagree. Just knowing that something is bothering her puts you ahead of almost everyone. He looked her in the eye for a brief second before he accused, you know what's wrong, don't you? I'll admit that I have an idea, but I won't say out of respect for her. So, let's drop it for now and get back to your training. Summon an orb and we'll get started. He sighed, but reluctantly complied. A large part of him wanted to find Ophis and talk to her, and he blamed the hero complex that he had gained throughout his life. He just couldn't ignore someone who was hurting or needed help. And right now, he believed that the infinite dragon goddess needed the help of Naruto Uzumaki. So let me get this straight, began Naruto as he stood in front of the ORC. He had arrived a few minutes ago after training with Kaguya for a couple of hours, and the past events left him curious. 2 women, exorcists of the Vatican, came here and practically ordered you both to stay out of their investigation concerning the swords of Excalibur. They also called Aisha-chan a witch and threatened to kill her, Issei cut in with a growl as he stood protectively next to the blonde ex-nun. They say a devil shouldn't believe in God and called her a heretic. Right, Naruto replied with an irritated look. See, it's actions like this that kept me astray from following any kind of religion. People always have to hunt down or discriminate against those who go against their faith, believing that their religion is the absolute truth. What's wrong with believing in someone, or something else? 1. Unfortunately, Aisha was once a member of their faith and they see her joining us devils as some kind of treason, Rias reasoned, though she didn't like it. They don't know how Aisha was deceived by fallen angels or that she was saved by us. Naruto shook his head in disappointment. It's ignorance that keeps peace from being achieved, he noted with a small growl. If people took the time to understand one another, to see past the animosity or differences between them, then we're that much closer to finding that peace. Easier said than done, Kiba stated with an uncharacteristic frown on his face. I want nothing to do with the church or anything concerning Excalibur. Rias looked to Kiba sadly alongside Akeno while the others looked concerned at his anger. At any rate, the red-headed king began, hoping to divert from the sensitive subject, I want all of you to avoid those girls. Stay out of their way so that we don't give the church a reason to use against us. The others agreed and disbanded, leaving Rias, Akeno, and Naruto in the clubroom. I don't like this, stated Naruto. Why should they be allowed to do whatever they wish inside of your territory? If anything, you should be more than within your right to intervene and stop them. Why would that upset the church? The ceasefire between our races is very fragile, Naruto-kun, explained Rias with a frown. I know this is my territory, I know I can make them leave, but I also know that when the Excalibur is involved then this is serious. Of course it is, sighed Naruto. We'll just leave them be, Naruto-kun. If they get into trouble though, she smiled sadistically, making him shiver, we'll know. You scare me sometimes, Akeno-chan, he deadpanned. Giggled the sadomasochist, palming her cheek with a blush on her face and making Rias roll her eyes. Anyway, there's something else we need to take care of, Naruto-kun. There is? He asked in surprise. We still have to go on our date, explained Rias with a smile. Akeno still had her smile, but it was slightly strained. Oh yeah, replied the Uzumaki with a faint blush. With everything that had happened, I completely forgot about that. I understand. Though, she played with her hair a bit, I'm not doing anything right now. We can go get that ramen I promised you. His stomach answered for him, making him rub his head in embarrassment. That sounds good, he answered. Shall we go? Rias smiled and took his arm in hers before she led him out. Akeno finally dropped her smile when they left, and a jealous look took its place. I should have asked first, she grumbled. You and me both, Naya, noted a familiar voice, making Akeno turn fast and see Kuroko resting on one of the shelves. I thought I had made such great progress with Foxy-kun. I didn't think I'd be beaten to the punch by Shironi-chan's king. Even though she was in cat form, Akeno knew she was pouting. It's not fair. Akeno's sweat dropped as a dark cloud of depression floated over the sulking cat. I have some strange competition. I'm surprised with you, Naruto commented as he set down his bowl and chopsticks. I thought you meant we'd just go to a ramen shop, which would have been just fine. Waving his arm to the basket next to him, he finished, "I didn't think you'd prepare a picnic or homemade ramen for me." Rias smiled proudly as she finished her cup of tea, enjoying the view the two had from the hilltop. "I'm glad you approve, and I hope the food came out okay. It's delicious." "Did you make it yourself?" To his surprise, she cringed. "I tried, but—" She took a page from his book and rubbed the back of her head with a sheepish expression. "It came out pretty bad." "How so?" "Well, for one thing, I accidentally gave one of my taste testers a serious stomach flu," she noted mentally, but would take that to her grave. "I wasn't able to get the flavor right. So, I asked Grafia to make some for our date. She did a great job then," he praised with a smile as he turned his gaze to the sunset. Rias watched as well, but she also took glances at her date and she saw his expression turn far off. "You okay?" she asked, taking his hand in hers. "Yeah, I'm all right. It's just that sitting up here and watching this," he waved to the setting sun, "reminds me of times I did it at home on the Hokage mountain." "I never knew that you did that," she noted. He gave her a slightly pointed look. "Because you only saw the life of Menma." She flinched. "Sorry. I know you don't like me comparing the two of you, but it's kind of hard. Both of you have similar stories, but they're obviously different too. And there's also Rias," interrupted Naruto, stopping her from rambling. "It's okay. I'm not mad about that anymore, all right?" He gave her a smile and gently poked her forehead, grinning as she pouted. "Don't worry about it." Still pouting, she huffed and leaned against him. "You forgive me too easily." He chuckled and wrapped an arm around her in response. "It's my nature, Rias-chan," he answered before the two of them just enjoyed the view. Bending backward, the last Uzumaki evaded a slash from Ophis before he pointed his hand to her and pushed her back with an almighty push. She moved with the force, gaining some distance before she began to send out wave after wave of energy slices that forced him on the defensive. Tensing, Naruto rolled forward to dodge a bone shard that was fired from Kaguya. Forming a clone mid-roll, he charged at Ophis while the copy shot out chains made of pure chakra at the rabbit goddess. Said goddess had a truth seeker orb form a sharp blade that she used to bat away the many spear tips. Meanwhile, Ophis and Naruto were performing an intense dance with their swords, moving in sync and not gaining any ground between the two of them. After one last clash, the two remained deadlocked with Ophis smirking at him while he was grinning at her. Blue eyes locked onto grey ones and both of them said nothing. It wasn't until Naruto flinched that he looked away from her and turned his gaze to Kaguya, who was smirking through the smoke of a recently dispelled clone. "Oh, don't mind me," she said casually. "You two just keep gazing into each other's eyes like star-crossed lovers." The blonde blushed brightly while Ophis had an almost invisible flush on her face. Breaking away from one another, Ophis turned away and opened up her portal again. "We'll continue tomorrow, Naruto." As the petite dragoness started to head for her portal, Kaguya nudged Naruto before nodding her head towards her friend. Getting the hint, Naruto headed for the portal just as it closed, entering it alongside Ophis, who looked at him in shock. Once the two exited the other side, Naruto took note that they were in front of a ruined castle that had been overrun with weeds and other vegetation. The stonework was also broken in various sections, making the place look like something out of a potential scary movie. "What is this place?" Naruto asked softly. "Why are you here?" Ophis asked in kind, her tone harsh and a scowl on her face. He looked nervous at her scowl. "I mean, Kaguya wanted me to." She closed her eyes and exhaled sharply, showing her irritation. "Damn that woman. She has no right." Ophis. Looking back to him, she sobered up her expression before turning back around. "Come on, then," she said as she began to head inside. "Might as well show you what she wanted you to see." He stood in place for a moment before he hurried after her. "This place was the home of Sparda and his wife, Eva," explained Ophis. "He settled down here after he fell in love and married her. She was a human, right?" "That's what you said some time ago." "Yes," sighed Ophis, and Naruto felt some bitterness coming from her. She was human, a priestess that intrigued him from their first encounter. A devil fell in love with someone from the clergy? The Uzumaki asked in surprise. "Is it really that shocking?" she asked with a raised brow. The holder of the boosted gear holds great affection for that nun girl who became a devil. He had to give her that one. "So, I take it that Red killed Eva too?" "Actually, no, he didn't. He only killed Sparda, making sure she saw him do it before she was left to grieve. By the time I got there, she had joined him in death. His eyes widened at that, and the two of them entered a study that was covered in dust while old and worn-out tomes filled the shelves. She killed herself? The loss of Sparda, the one who she loved above everyone else, was too much for her. She couldn't bear a day without him. She placed a hand on the dusty desk, a look of grief on her face. I felt the same when I saw his body. He was my best friend, and someone I loved. The Uzumaki regarded her with a look of pity as he moved over to her. Hesitantly, he placed a hand on her shoulder, which earned him her attention and the sight of a tear rolling down her cheek. He said nothing, squeezing her shoulder gently to show his support. After a moment, another tear fell and he found her hugging him tightly as she wept into his chest. His arms wrapped around her, one hand stroking her back soothingly. "I miss him," she choked out, her body trembling for a moment. "I'm going to kill Red for what he did, make him pay for taking Sparda away from me." He frowned sadly at her declaration. "Not alone, you won't." He looked down to her as she looked up to him. "Kaguya and I will be there too, I promise." Their eyes locked once more, and she found her heart racing at the intensity of his gaze while a smile slowly formed on her face. Resting against him again, she whispered, "Thank you. You foolish girls, taunted a fallen angel who possessed 5 pairs of wings. You still haven't found it out? God is dead." The peerages of Rias Gremory and Sona Citri, the exorcists Irina Shidu and Zenovia Quarter, and Kuroka all looked on with shock at the declaration while Aisha looked horrified. "Enno," she whispered as tears formed. He can't be dead." Kokabiel grinned maliciously at the girl. "What's this, a devil who has faith? What are the odds?" Floating down, he landed in front of the distraught Aisha while everyone else tensed as they knew they couldn't do anything. He gave a sidelong glance to Fried and Valpa, both of whom were indisposed thanks to everyone else. "I really need better followers if they were bested by you lot." Akeno was glaring especially hard at Kokabiel, her rage towards fallen angels still burning inside her. However, her glare lessened to a look of relief at a new arrival. "Naruto," she whispered softly, the name only being caught by Rias and the Nico sisters. Kokabiel hadn't noticed as he kept his grin towards Aisha. Crouching low, he raised her head so that her tearful eyes looked into his cruel ones. "Would you like to join God, little girl? I can send you to him, if you wish. Just ask." The others finally took notice of another arrival and many of them smirked while Sona's group and the exorcists were confused as to his identity. The blonde man with 3 eyes tapped the fallen angel on his shoulder, getting his attention and making him turn to see who would dare touch him. "Who the hell are you, boy?" He growled out, feeling sick that some filth touched him. Naruto offered the fallen angel a polite smile as he answered, "No one special. But that's a friend of mine you're offering to kill." The smile remained, but an oppressive aura accompanied it which made Kokabiel tense. "Do me a favor and get away from her, please." He finally stopped smiling and glared at him with all 3 of his eyes. "Now." The man smirked at him, confidence rolling off of him. "And what will you do if I don't, filth?" Naruto was silent as he kept up his glare, while Aisha moved away from the 2 of them and ran into Issei's arms. "Nothing you would expect," answered the Uzumaki with a smirk. This confused Kokabiel before he grunted and gasped in pain that originated from behind him. Looking down, he saw a black blade with a glowing orange core piercing out of his chest, directly where his heart would be. "How? You really should be more aware of your surroundings," admonished Naruto's clone from behind Kokabiel. "You never even suspected anyone would get you from behind," continued the original. "Your arrogance blinds you, and it just cost you." Both the clone and the blade faded away, making Kokabiel stagger back and grip his chest while blood soaked his hand. "I don't appreciate anyone threatening my friends, people I cherish," stated Naruto as his aura spiked again, pushing down the fallen with its pressure. "I've already lost many good friends to people like you, people who seek only the death and suffering of others. I refuse to let it happen again so long as I am still breathing." "You insolent brat!" coughed Kokabiel as he stepped away from the approaching blonde. "You think that killing me will fix things? There are more like me out there, those who will finish what was started years ago. The war will resume," he grinned maliciously, "and it will be glorious." He wasn't able to say any more as the man was engulfed in a massive explosion, his scream being drowned out by it. This caught the others by surprise save for Naruto who only smirked and turned to Yuba Luna, who stood behind him. Nice shot, he praised. She smirked back. Would you expect any less? The blonde chuckled at that before turning back to Kakashi, who was covered in burns. I despise people like you, he growled out. This world will be better off without you. He then vanished from sight, reappearing right behind the fallen angel with a pitch-black blade in his hand post-swing. Kakashi coughed up some blood and grit out, you can't save them all. His head then fell from his shoulders while the body dropped to the ground, not moving anymore. Sighing, Naruto dismissed his weapon before turning to the others. They were looking at him with mixed expressions of shock, respect, and relief. This made him grin sheepishly, rubbing his head with one hand while the other waved awkwardly. Yo. Resting on his bed, Naruto looked up at the ceiling of his room. Zenovia had been accepted into Rias's peerage as her second night piece. Irina, on the other hand, returned to the church after bidding her friend goodbye. He chuckled as he recalled how she had shyly hugged Issei farewell, her face as red as a ripe tomato. He had also been properly introduced to Sona and her peerage, as well as Sona's sister Seraphil Leviathan, who was one of the 4 Satans. Said devil woman was particularly grateful and nearly bowled him over when she hugged him for saving Sona. For a highly respected devil, the woman sure was excitable. A knock at his door roused him from his recollection, and he called out, "Come in." The door opened and Yuba Luna stepped inside, closing the door behind her and looking down. Naruto. Luna, he greeted kindly. Everything okay? She stayed by the door, her gaze locked to the ground. I've made a decision on what I want between us. Oh? He asked, sitting up on his bed. And what's you decide? The woman moved over to him, standing directly in front of his seated form. Looking up finally, he was greeted with the sight of her face blushing slightly and a glint in her eye. I choose this, she answered before she leaned in. The next thing Naruto knew was her lips melding with his own.